Hello everyone, welcome back to Talking All Things. Today we are talking about the Dalek invasion of Earth to celebrate the 59-year anniversary of Part 6, Flashpoint. As ever, I am joined with Luke.
Oh, that was a different experience.
Yes,
Hello,
you've been
everyone.
stuck on the Dalek saucer, and here you are, arriving in the mines of Bedfordshire.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, that was a bit of a roller coaster, wasn't it?
It was. Our van didn't explode. It was all good.
No. Well, that was your journey, mate.
Yeah, that was.
Mine was I had to throw a Roboman out the chute. Oh, I had to climb out without being seen.
I had to deal with the sliver.
Yeah, down into the mine. Oof.
But
really knocks the breath out of you a bit.
Yeah, I think we're missing somebody. I think.
Yeah, we need a waking ally with us, don't we?
We do. We have Stephen Noonstar.
Good heavens! What a lovely name for me. I wonder who came up with that. I'm just as it happens. I'm just reading this this year's edition of the Radio Times, Christmas Radio Times. And lovely cover, that, isn't it? It's a rather lovely cover they got. It cost me 20 pence. 20 pence. And can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
And tomorrow, the day after Boxing Day, at 3:00, is a repeat of Genesis of the Daleks. There's a rather lovely.
Is that Frank Bellamy?
It's beautiful, Frank. I can't get it in the shot there. Beautiful Frank Bellamy illustration. Yeah.
Ice Stalk Exterminator.
And yes, and there are advertisements for holidays. You can go to the Soviet Union from £120 to visit.
Fairly reasonable.
Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev, interestingly enough, in the year 1976. Hang on a minute, I'm not sure is this the right edition? Oh no, this is 1975. Good God. What year is it actually?
It's 1964 as it happens.
Oh God! So I'm about 10 years out, aren't I? Just a little bit out. And so we're not discussing Genesis of the Daleks, are we? Discussing something else.
Yeah, we've done Genesis of the Daleks several times.
Absolutely the wrong Dalek here. In fact, that's even the wrong Dalek for Genesis, isn't it? That's
it was repurposed. It's probably the same.
Yeah. Well, Dalek. What's the name of that channel? Dalek 6388, with no doubt.
Yeah.
Tell us which bits of it survived from 1964. So remind us, lads. What are we talking about tonight?
We're mentioning the War Machines. We're breaking the cardinal.
Oh my God! No. Yeah, and this is a rare moment because I've not done this before.
No.
Talked about, as it were, the War Machines. But I thought, as we're doing this for the celebration, here we are. Look what I've got here. We so rarely get a chance to celebrate. But this time we must. Yes, it's what is it? It's Christmas. That's right. Yes.
Is it
Christmas? Is it?
So here's a toast. If I get, what are you? Are you two having a drink this evening on this?
I am.
This
Saint Stephen's Day.
Mm-hmm.
I sent a message to somebody saying Happy St. Stephen's Day earlier on. And they said, "Oh, I didn't know it was your birthday," and they'd misunderstood that St. Stephen's Day is of course another name for Boxing Day. Here we are. Okay, so let's see. What are you drinking, Luke?
Was your
Well, that's right. He was stoned to death, St. Stephen. Unfortunately, so that was a clever
by some savages.
Of my parents. I'm not sure who it was, but they were probably quite barbaric at the time. Here it comes.
Oh, there we go. Hey.
I'm going to pour it out. Hang on a minute. Where's the glass gone? Oh, here it is. Yes. So let me do this.
Another Terry Nation story.
Very exactly. He used to drink it every day. On the Daleks. Unlike Ray Cusick, who drank a glass of bitter tears every day. £100 he was paid. Was it an ex gratia payment of £100? Here's to the Dalek invasion of Earth, which
Flashpoint.
we're discussing. Flashpoint.
There we go.
So and incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Very good. Very, very good. Well,
it's a topic that you've got a fair amount of expertise in, isn't it?
Well, I've
you've done
watched
your
it.
research for reasons
I've watched it.
I'm not entirely clear on.
I watched it a few times, yeah. But of course, the strange thing is, like watching this again in the last couple of days for the purposes of this, is a very different approach to the approach that I've been on for the last 2 years, which is just listening to his lines and trying to match what I do to the way he sounds. So it's strange to go back to a story and watch it objectively, watching the whole story, which is
soaking in the whole thing rather than focusing in on.
I'm sort of switching off that part of my brain that just keeps sort of obsessively focusing in on what he sounds like. And it's very difficult to, because there'll be a scene where I go, oh god, I'll have to try and mimic that now because
you notice a new thing every time.
Every time that there seems to be a new sort of layer to be revealed. In a moment, because I want this to be full of surprises. I've got a little unexpected. I don't know if it's a treat, but anyway, it's an experience lined up. But let's start like we usually do. Before I do that, with our first experiences, very, very quickly, of the story. Starting with, who wants to go first? Ben.
Go on, Luke. This is yours. This is yours.
Luke, when did you first?
I'll go first, because this one's quite a special one for me, I suppose. Because it was my second ever Classic Who story.
Was it?
One of my very first Doctor Who stories in general, really, because it would have been Christmas 2005. I got this up, or it might have actually been Boxing Day itself.
The DVD, which was released in 2003.
Yeah, it was originally.
Yeah.
I vividly remember being round my nan and granddad's house, sitting down on the floor and opening this one up.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I stuck at least one part of it on while I was there before, going home and presumably watching the rest over the forthcoming couple of days. But certainly vivid memories of that, and really loving it, to be honest. Like, I think there was sort of a trepidation from my family getting me this, thinking, oh, he's only watched mostly new series stuff, never anything black and white.
Yeah.
So, how will he react to?
So this was the first. This was the first one, the first black and white Doctor Who you saw.
Yeah, first black and white.
Right,
second ever classic. The only other one was Frontier and Space.
Were you not sort of thrown by the pace of it and the complete difference of tone? Because the new series. It's just so wham bam, isn't it? And the pace of it and everything. It's just a completely different. Had you seen other stuff from the 60s, other television from the 60s?
Only Thunderbirds.
Right, which is much more tightly edited and expensive, isn't it?
Yeah,
and in color, obviously. Yeah.
That was not performed as live and such.
So not at all.
No, that would be
not a living thing to be seen. In fact, that's interesting.
No. Sometimes you get the real people's hands for the close-ups.
You do get hands, don't you? Yeah. But so you immediately beguiled by it, were you?
No, nothing really threw me in that respect. Or if it did, I can't say I remember being that bothered by the pace of it. I feel like there may have been an initial moment of, oh, is this the Doctor, while looking at Ian? And then
expecting a relatively young, good-looking bloke. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also a bit beguiled by, this large TARDIS crew, because before it'd either been Ninth Doctor and Rose or Third Doctor and Joe. So it was unusual having a whole group of them in there and a Doctor having a granddaughter.
Who was the Doctor at this time on the telly? When you
I think
there wasn't one. Sorry, no, it just started.
No, it started in March. So it would have been David Tennant by this time. Okay. I think I would have seen Christmas
just David Tennant, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
For the first time.
So it was familiar with regeneration as a concept by this point.
And what about you, Ben?
I saw the film first. That's my first
yeah.
memory of this actual story, but I genuinely have no real memory of actually sitting down and watching it, only being scared by the DVD menu of this one.
You were scared by it?
Oh.
Yeah, because they had I think they had a Dalek voiceover on it, on I think the making of disc 2 of the DVD, and that scared me. That's my only sort of memory of Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Presumably Nick, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, how interesting! Right, okay, and then, so was this the first black and white one you'd seen?
No, Tomb of the Cybermen was my first black and white. So,
and you'd loved that, hadn't you?
Loved that.
And you'd been frightened by that, hadn't you?
Been frightened by Tomb, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think with the Hartnell ones, I tended to skip towards the monsters.
Right.
So I'd sort of skim over.
So you'd whiz through it.
Yeah. Just so I could get to the Dalek bits or whatever creature it would be.
Yeah.
Oh.
Cheating.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's horrible.
Well, the power that's available to you when you can fast forward a DVD.
Yeah. Well. I mean, my experience of it was Longleat. And prior to that, I mean, bear in mind, as I always say, we couldn't see any black and white stuff until 81. We had 5 Faces. So all I'd seen was the only complete story before this at Longleat was an Unearthly Child in the November of 1981. But throughout the 70s, so there were the clips on Blue Peter, but there wasn't a clip from this. The only bit of this I'd ever heard, because I didn't see it because I was in hospital, and when Who's Doctor Who was transmitted, the documentary at Easter 1977, which was the weekend, the Sunday, the day after episode 6 of Talons of Weng Chiang, there was Who's Doctor Who documentary, which those of us who were Doctor Who fans were just couldn't wait to see, because we knew it had going to have clips in it. So we would see clips from, all the way through from the beginning. And Sod's Law, of course, I was in hospital that weekend, and I've told this story before. And I was in this ward, this children's ward. Incidentally, the children's hospital is now an old people's home, and my mother is a resident in that old people's home. So it's a very, very surreal experience going to visit somewhere which was probably the most traumatic experience of my life for 2 reasons. It was a very painful operation. I won't tell you what it was, but it involved quite a delicate part of the body.
You didn't have a black Dalek nearby going, "Commence the operation."
Well, what we did have was a terrifying night nurse who, because it was quite painful to urinate after this operation, and I was in terrible pain the first time I was trying to do this, and this dreadful night nurse, as I was going expressing my pain, and she went, "Ark at the dying swan," which was very sympathetic.
And do a robot man. Stop. Then
she had nothing on, or the Daleks had, and the Robomen had nothing on this. The nurses in the Birkenhead Children's Hospital. Anyway, there's me, another lad down the end of the ward, lovely lad in glasses with his leg up in a cast. When you've got your leg up in the air.
Yeah.
And I sort of quite quickly, socialised with kids and found that he was a massive Doctor Who fan.
I'm going to think Hartnell had his leg up in a cast while he was meant to be filming episode 4, didn't he?
That's right, exactly. Well, we can come to that. I think, well, he was his spine was paralysed, wasn't it? And so he wanted to watch it, and then it got around the wall that there was this Doctor Who thing on BBC 2 on Sunday evening. It was the week before Easter. And they were showing for the first time Jesus of Nazareth on ITV. And the nurses said that they weren't going to turn over from Jesus of Nazareth to this thing. They refused. And they said, "We never have BBC 2 on in this ward." Like it was just the most preposterous thing she'd ever heard. So
might have been nuns.
I had to, it was Merseyside. be
Yeah.
Catholic. And so I had to sit through watching Jesus, knowing that on the other side were all these clips from old Doctor Who stories. Anyway, my dear parents taped it on a cassette, an audio cassette off the telly, which is still a precious recording to me. And there was the Dalek confrontation with Hartnell in episode 2. I think the first line is "Obey us or die" is the first line of that clip, and that's that famous where Hartnell's sort of. I think it's one of these scenes where Hartnell is establishing himself as the principal character of the series. It's one of the first great.
First time he's standing up to evil directly.
The first great standoff, isn't it? You know, with in my mind indelibly remembered lines. You know, which have now immediately slipped my mind. But you know,
Conquer the Earth.
That's the one, isn't it? I'm going to try and get through tonight without actually doing any.
I just hear you to condemn us to death.
Doing any impressions. I'll leave you to do it. And of course, I knew that whole documentary off by heart because I just listened to it over and over again. So that was the first scene I'd heard. And there's also the scene with Craddock in the cell, the Boyle's Law scene when they're trying to get out. They're trying to get out of the cell with it, where they. It's rather strange that they haven't cottoned on. It's quite clearly a trap.
I mean, it's not a hair combing like in the movie.
Oh, did you watch the movie today?
I watched a bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah. You texted me to say it was on. I watched it for years. Talking of the movie, so there were those scenes, and then I think the year later there was a program called Screen Test where they'd show clips from a film or several films, and the kids there's a panel of kids, and they'd be asked questions. You know, what was happening, what color was the anorak the kid was wearing in the third scene or whatever, and we all knew that there was going to be a scene from Daleks Invasion of Earth 2150 AD, and this must have been while Invasion of Time was being broadcast. So it was between sort of episodes 4 and 5 in the week. I remember the anticipation in the day at school, knowing that there was going to be a clip from the Dalek film, which I hadn't seen yet, and it was the scene where the Dalek comes out of the water, and that was impossibly exciting. Then there was a bloke who used to come to show bits of children's films at children's parties, and we were at this sort of kid's birthday party, a kid called Jonathan Shepherd, and this bloke was there. And he got all these films, and you could say, "Have you got this?" And I said, "Have you got any clips from the Dalek films?" And he said, "Oh yeah, hang on a minute." And there were sequences from both Dalek films that we saw clips of at this kid's party.
And it's funny, isn't it, how despite it being Doctor Who, they're known as the Dalek films, because that is, you know, the main iconography of.
Well, it's cashing in on the Dalek mania, isn't it? That's what it is, isn't it? More than anything.
Well, and the second film, the adaptation of this story, is called Daleks, isn't it? There's Doctor Who isn't in the title, so it's quite clearly, the Daleks are the thing that has put Doctor Who culturally on the map.
Well, this is the first time the show actually cashes in on it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I'd say so.
That's right. Well, it's during the making of Marco Polo that this story was commissioned. That they'd been mulling it over, and so it must be. Sorry, hang on a minute. So is it during the? Was it during the transmission of Marco? I'm getting mixed up now.
I mean, it could have been both because there would.
It's March. Whatever's March. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, so they're filming. Assassinate. No, they're preparing.
Assassinate
what's
Peking?
going out. What's going out? One of them's one of the early episodes is going out, and then Assassinate Peking. They are recording when they make the decision to do the story. They call The Return of the Daleks, because it hasn't got this title yet. So they commissioned. That's right, Nation to do this during the recording and transmission of Marco Polo. And it's about a couple of weeks later that David Whittaker is commissioned to write the novelization of the first story. So this is all March 1664,
Yeah.
just before the Great Plague and the Fire of London. Hang on a minute, no, that's
No.
so the
Just
pterodactyls
before the
have
discovery
just
of
arrived.
Mavity.
Oh,
We've established Mavity's a cat in a musical, and so yeah, so it's all, and then the first Dalek book is commissioned. Right? So the Dalek novelization.
What
the
about
Dalek
was the
annual.
Dalek film?
that was 65, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's when it came out. But
it's all round about this time that the commissioning is going on. In the
imagine the toys as well. That was when that license started.
in the aftermath. Yeah, that hasn't quite happened yet, and that all happens in 65. I think that's Dalek Mania. But this is the start of it as they're processing it, the huge ratings of the Daleks, the popularity with the kids,
and they realised they had a true success on their hands.
Yeah, and Terry Nation's starting to rub his hands and probably starting to drink this every day. And so Return of the Daleks, as it was called, was commissioned as they're doing Marco Polo. Yeah, so then the film, they show the two films. I think it was June, July of summer 1978. So it was after, in the summer before the Key to Time season, was the first time, and they were in the morning on a fortnight separated the two Saturdays, and they showed Doctor and the Daleks and then Invasion of 2150 AD. So seeing them for the first time complete on beautiful sunny summer mornings in 1978, and I put my talking Daleks and my Palitoid Daleks up on the sideboard to prepare. I remember going to the shops, beautiful summer morning, going to get some sweets to stock up to see this probably the most exciting film experience of my childhood, and I know terribly just to see Daleks, because bear in mind we'd had Genesis of the Daleks. There's a 4-year gap between Genesis and Destiny of the Daleks, which of course was well worth waiting for, as Ben would testify.
I would.
So we were starving for Daleks, having had Genesis in 75. We hadn't had Daleks in 3 years by this point. So it's just to see a Dalek and to hear a Dalek was impossibly exciting. And then it was Longleat, and I was only there on the first day of Longleat. It was Saturday, and so it was Easter, Sunday, and Monday, and I had to go on a French exchange trip on the Monday, and so I was going to miss the second day. And looking at the program when I arrived, I was so gutted, because the two stories they were showing on the first day were Daleks Invasion of Earth, that's fine, and the Dominators. Even at that point, I knew that wasn't going to be the most funny. But on the day I was going to miss, they were showing Terror of the Autons and Terror of the Bloody Zygons. So I was going to miss, the stories.
Absolute terror.
Two of the stories that I was so, eager to see old Pertwee, or to see, Hinchcliffe, Tom Baker, because bear in mind we hadn't seen any of them since they've been on. And I thought, okay, well, we'll go in and watch, because of course there were competing events, so there were panel discussions. And so we thought, well, if we go and see Daleks Invasion of Earth, we might miss that. But I realized that it was a Troughton panel discussion was on about an hour and a half or an hour or so into the screening of Dalek Invasion of Earth. I think there might have been 2 screenings a day. And so we went in this big tent, and so the first episode unfolds. I remember the first sight of the flying saucer, the whole tent erupted in uproarious laughter at the ridiculousness of the special effect of the flying saucer, and I'm ashamed to say, oh, thank you. I'm ashamed to say that by the end of Day of Reckoning, I was getting rather tired and bored of it. I thought, oh God, this is, and there were other elderly fans, older fans who'd seen it, people who would be elderly now, people who'd seen it when it went out, and overhearing conversations with them later in the day, they were sort of, it's not like I remembered it.
So it had been nearly 20 years.
And that experience that younger fans, revived series fans, will never have of having that such a long time between the first viewing of it and then coming back to it, and sometimes being shocked and disappointed by it not living up to something you saw 10, 15 years before, or whatever it was.
Yeah, the closest I ever came was my friend once loaned me a copy of Day of the Daleks on VHS.
Right.
And so I managed to get one viewing of that when I must have been around 8, I think. And I didn't get the DVD until I turned 16. So there was a good 8-year gap there for me between
was
that.
Was a DVD with the special edition DVD?
Yeah, the special edition DVD.
Well,
I think I watched the regular version first.
Right. Yeah. And what was it? Was it sort of not as good as you'd remembered it?
Just different, really. I don't know quite. It's but the memory cheats, doesn't it? It's just funny how.
So somebody once said, apparently. I don't
might
know.
Even be a special feature named after it.
I know. I wouldn't stand for my memory cheating. I won't have it.
You need to lay down strict rules.
Well, absolutely. So that was so, and I knew I was going to miss the Troughton panel if we stayed and watched the last 3 episodes, and I wasn't disappointed to leave the take because that was my first experience of a long black and white story, and it was.
They're not made to be watched in one go as well. They are very much made.
Of course they're not. Now because I have become addicted to boredom. I can watch any number of black and white stories all in one sitting, or several all in one day. But at the age of 14, my boredom threshold was a bit lower than it is. And I think I was surprised by just how slow it was. And then when did I see? I
suppose watching it with loads of other people is a very different experience to when you're sat by yourself.
It wasn't very atmospheric in a tent on a rainy April, afternoon. It wasn't the ideal environment for it. And then I didn't see the whole thing until the VHS came out, which is when was the VHS? Is it relatively early, the VHS?
I feel like it must have been one of the earlier ones. Let's have a look.
I can't remember when it was. And I didn't. And then when the DVD came out in 2003, and that was when I finally sort of fell in love with it, as it were. I suppose because I got used to what the deal was with these stories by that point, and I think sort of the fact that they'd CGI'd the spaceship, it's terribly shallow of me. But I watched it with. I thought, well, that's fix that, because it's the only really embarrassing thing about the thing is that. And I sort of watched it. I thought, well, now that suddenly looks, so much better. And
it was May 1990, the VHS, by the way.
Oh, that is okay. Yeah, relatively early. Yeah. So they've been 5 years into them by that point. Oh, yeah. And then it's one of my favorites now. It's one of my absolute favorites. And each time I watch it, I enjoy it more, which happens with a lot of Doctor Who stories. So
for me, it's one of those ones that's impossible to separate from that nostalgia of watching it for the first time. But particularly part 1 always drags me back to that. And I think watching it at this time of year as well is really wonderful.
What, because it was when it went out?
Partially, and also because it's when I first got it as well and would have first seen it. Which I suppose lines up quite nicely with when it first came out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hello to the stylish one in the chat, by the way. Thank you
for joining us. Have a look at the chat. Who's there?
We did have Sam with us earlier, but sadly he's had to leave early. But thank you for joining us while you were there. He's been enjoying the rum.
It's very good.
And we've also had Daniel Hager, host of TV and film talk show with us. Thank you
Very
for
nice.
this, Daniel.
Has he yet cleared up with it how we pronounce his name, whether it's correct or not?
No,
I
we're
think
still
so.
not
One
got
more
to the bottom of
time.
that. Please let us know, Daniel.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
Hager or Hager or something completely different?
Yeah, it's probably one of the two. Yeah.
We hope.
Yeah. But so looking at it now, what are your sort of major thoughts about Dalek's Invasion of Earth? On this, do you watched it in the last few days?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
To
refresh yourself. Well, actually, funnily enough, I started watching this before you even suggested.
Oh, that's right. It was literally a couple of days ago, wasn't it? I thought we should do a Christmas story to coincide with one of the stories that went out around about this time.
Yeah, because you asked if I was around for a chat that evening.
That's right.
Said you had a brilliant idea, and I said,
"Did I really? How
yes,
very modest."
Well, it might have just been an idea, but it was a brilliant one. Maybe that's my opinion. Inflecting it on the past.
Anyway,
and so I'd watched part one, and then we started having a call. I mentioned it, and you said, via coincidence, if you
because you're all about that, Lee.
That was your brilliant idea.
That was it, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
And then we got in touch with Ben to double check he was free. It was like,
of course I'm free.
You want to do it or not?
Yeah, well, by chance, there were various options, weren't there? Because there were other stories.
Yeah, we were looking at what else.
But this was the one that we could all do. I think it was the day before the last episode of the invasion, wasn't it? I think it was we just missed that because that was the 21st. That was the 21st. But no, it's strange talking about Hartnell's story. It feels very odd. This is good practice because it's an odd thing now, having spent the last 2 years obsessing about the era, but in a with a very particular perspective. With a particular lens, to use the irritating word everybody uses these days, with the lens of just with my monocle, my Hartnell monocle. Being mono-focused about it. So it's an odd thing to talk about it. And as we are building up to the release of Future of the Daleks, I thought it's about time to start sort of addressing it and thinking about doing interviews to talk about publicizing it and talking about the process of doing it. So this is a good icebreaker, but it feels quite strange because I feel so comfortable talking about Pertwee and Baker because it's my era and I feel sort of safe. It's my safe space. There is, I suppose, I'm never more comfortable than when I'm watching a Pertwee story or a Hinchcliffe story and talking about it. I know the territory, and of course this stuff is before my time. But yeah, I suppose there was a long time when we were getting to see them for the first time, where there was a sort of bit of a cultural divide about going, my God, this is slow, isn't it?
I mean, it's funny because you have now discussed, or like right back to 2005 when it first came back, you were saying, that difference, and people sort of put a dividing line in the sand between the classic series and the new series and sort of lump all of the classic series in together as being, slow, serialized TV. But it's funny.
The funny thing is also is the way Revive series fans, because I was talking to who Rob Whitelock is.
Yeah.
Very old friend, very old friend of mine. And he said it must be great being a Revive series fan because they just look back at it all and it's all the same. They weren't there. They weren't sort of in this bit that they like more than they just. Look at it all, and it's all this great big thing called classic Doctor Who, and they can go to that story and they dip into that story and do, and as you've said, you didn't become aware of what the different eras were necessarily for ages. It was difficult to negotiate your way around the huge,
particularly when you're young and you're not necessarily as aware of what all the stories are.
You just see a cover
around
and you go for that,
yeah. but if you know, and of course, you know, it's interesting to talk about to Nick Briggs or Gary Russell or, you know, older fans, people older than me, Mark. And so, you know, and they were there at a particular time, and then they would have prejudices against, as they became teenagers, prejudices against eras that, as they were sort of getting to a stage to start perhaps growing out of it in some ways. So both Elstob and Briggs had resistance to the Hinchcliffe stuff even at the time, because they were getting to that bolshy teenage...
The edgelord phase.
Yeah, there we go.
But you just naturally become critical as a teenager and eye-rolling and oh, it's not as good as it was.
It's part of growing up, really, isn't it?
It is all part of growing up. Then of course, you know. So for me, as I've said many times, and I'm not gonna get too harsh on the era, but there was that
kicking the tin dog.
There's that. So what is it's like Nick and I. Who's that? That was it's that line that I was watching through. That it's what's this one? Orders, master. Orders, master. He keeps saying it over and over again, to the extent that you actually want to smash the telly in it.
Go be a marshman and just whack his head off.
That's not the story, but
no.
You're quite close.
Is it Power of Kroll?
No. Go the other way.
None of Masters.
Yeah.
State of Decay.
No.
Not State of Decay. What's the?
You could be if you. I was going to give you a clue. I said if you were particularly defensive about aspects, you could be accused of Warriors gatekeeping. Yeah. Come 1977. That was the, you know, I think Gary Russell said in an interview that it's like you get to Horrorfang Rock's sort of Hinchcliffian image of the Fendal. He said in an interview it was like a switch had been flicked with Sunmakers. Suddenly Tom Baker's giving a different performance, is being flippant, and K9's there. Okay, he's been there for a couple of stories. He's not in Image of the Fendal. He starts in Invisible Enemy, and it's suddenly a different tone altogether, you know. And that was my experience. So my Doctor Who is from, I suppose, Spearhead from Space to Horrorfang Rock. That was the stuff I grew up with. But knowing about this stuff and then gradually becoming familiar with it as the videos, the DVDs came out, the VHS came out, the DVDs came out. Reading the novelizations, of course, and being nurturing and being fond of it because you admired it because it came before my stuff, you know, and so respecting it and but you know, this is why, those are the four Doctors to me. And after that, there are the highs and lows, and there's better bits, and there's Doctors I prefer than the two others. But that's the stuff that I sort of venerate. But a lot of it was like watching it because the production values seemed to be so discrepant between the black and white stuff and the color stuff because of the continuous record thing. It did seem like it had been recorded a hell of a long time ago. But you've said you don't particularly notice that as a difference in I suppose polish between the 60s and the 70s stuff. But I mean, look at the polish, the difference between the way this is shot and recorded and Spearhead from Space, you know, or Seeds of Doom. Surely you can see the...
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, objectively, I can look at it and see the difference there.
Yeah.
But, you know, things like the spaceship going over there, you know, apparently everyone was laughing at. And even Ben can't bear to watch. He has to switch over to the CGI.
No, I actually watched the original version this time.
Ah, you went for it this time.
Yeah.
So I'm not alone with the CGI there, Ben.
No. I'll be in your corner.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, it's not like I'm looking at it going, oh wow, that's an amazing effect, but it just doesn't particularly bother me or take me out of it. It
Well,
washes over me. Really.
I suppose because you know that all this stuff is ancient, so you see
more forgiving.
The point is, in '83 we hadn't seen any of it. We hadn't seen the Hinchcliffe stuff. I had yet to be appalled by the special effects in Ark in Space, because in my mind, it had the production values of Alien because of the Ian Martin novelization. We talked about this before, you know.
Yeah. So we have got a link to Ark in Space, isn't it? Dalek Invasion of Earth.
In the first scene.
Yeah.
Kenton Moore. Kenton
Noah.
Moore is the Roboman who commits suicide at the beginning. Is Noah in Ark in Space? Same actor. This wasn't the surprise I was talking about earlier, but I thought because we've got the novelization here, and this was Terence was still getting his finger out at this point. This came out. Oh God, what was it? I think this came out while Talons of Weng Chiang was on.
Okay.
And also, be it noted, it says, based on the BBC television serial Doctor Who and the World's End, which of course was what I called it throughout the 70s and into the 80s, because it said that in the novelization and in the Radio Times special. So we knew it as World's End. And so, okay, they just called the book this. The film's called that, but the story was called World's End because of the convention of. But I thought I'd read the first bit because it's Terence still very much on form. And this is
he's not been worn down yet.
Well, he's not churning out one a month, as he was sort of late 70s, early 80s. And as I've said, the almost unforgivable one, although we forgive him everything because we love Uncle Terence, was Robots of Death, which is the width of an After Eight mint. Chapter 1, Return to Terror. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Through the ruin of a city stalked the ruin of a man. His clothes were tattered and grimy, his skin blotched and diseased over wasted flesh. On his head was a gleaming metal helmet. He walked with the stiff, jerky movements of a robot, which was exactly what he had become. The robot man moved through the shattered rubble of a once great city, a fitting inhabitant of a nightmare landscape. In time, he came to a river, a sluggish, debris-choked, polluted stream, which had once carried great ships. He quickened his pace, sensing that the water would provide the thing he sought, a way to end an existence of misery and pain. When he came to a gap in the embankment wall, he marched stiffly through it and plunged into the water below. He fell like a log or a stone, making no attempt to save himself. Dragged down by the weight of the helmet, his head sank beneath the grimy waters. There was something inhuman about the manner of his death. But then, he had not been truly human for a very long time. There we are.
Wonderful stuff.
It is. No, it was
almost could have been read on a Christmas Eve as a M.R. James style little ghost story.
Well, indeed, and funnily enough, I was what I was listening to earlier off the beaten track here was Tom Baker. Have you ever seen Who on Earth is? No, not is it called Who on Earth is? It's a video.
Yeah.
Where he interviews himself. You seen the one?
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. And
at one point, he reads from the opening chapter of The Christmas Carol, and I just love the. So I actually dug out the novel to check out because I was astonished by the resonance of Tom's voice, but also astonished by how many epithets Dickens could get into one sentence, or adjectives, as it were. So this was the section that Tom was doing, which is, oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand of the grindstone was Scrooge. And this is the number, all these adjectives: a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. And he pronounces it like that. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though they said, No eye at all is better than an evil eye. Dark Master. He really milks it. It's wonderful. So it inspired me to reread A Christmas Carol after many, many years. But anyway, I'm deliberately digressing.
One of our most wide tangents we've had. A fascinating.
Well, it's I suppose it is a strange trepidation with which I approached talking about the Hartnell stories. And because they're sort of, they're stories that I'm familiar with, but there's always a sense of there's never the same excitement or enthusiasm about going to a black and white story as there is about going to an early 70s story. Sometimes it feels a bit like, well, recently it's felt like homework, but sometimes it feels like, oh, I suppose I'd better watch whatever it is, I don't know, what's another, the Time Meddler, I never have the same enthusiasm about going to see watch these stories as I do with the colour ones, the early 70s ones. But is that so with you two? I mean, do you find a bit of a it's harder work, or is it got less hard work?
I think I've noticed it a lot of this time because all the Doctor, watching this time, because I think because all my Doctor Who watching's been 70s, preparing for all the things we've been talking about this year. To suddenly go back to that,
I'm still here. I'm just stopping the camera a second. Yeah, carry on.
Going back to that sort of storytelling was quite a shift for me.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I feel like I'm often jumping around, but do definitely tend to land either 60s or mid to early 70s with my view.
But your favourite is Troughton, though, isn't it? Is that right?
My favourite Doctor, but I'd say my favourite era would be the Third Doctor era.
I see. Oh, that's an interesting distinction, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
So you both share the same favourite eras.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's certainly when there's a stronger quality overall of story as well.
So would you have liked Troughton to stick around for the Pertwee stories? Can you imagine Troughton in the Pertwee stories?
I don't know, not particularly, because I think there is some Pertwee is very much a part of his era, really, which sounds funny to say because
I know what you mean.
Seems obvious, but
no, I know. But he fits it perfectly, doesn't he? Like a glove, yeah. Whereas Troughton, yes, it would have worked. Of course, it would have worked because Troughton's such a great actor and he's a great Doctor. But the whole sort of ethos of co-opting James Bond, and the action, the action adventure stuff, the gadgets and the vehicles and all that stuff fits with John Pertwee perfectly, doesn't it? With that era.
Yeah, that's it. Really, I wouldn't want to go back and change it at all, even for my favorite Doctor. So I think he does work very well in the stories that he has. But if the quality overall is better for Pertwee's.
Yeah, and if the Troughton era is your favourite, then you haven't actually you're not in luck when it comes to being able to see them, are you?
That's also true.
Yeah, that is a problem there. So where would you two rate Dalek's Invasion of Earth of the Hartnell stories?
Probably in my top 3.
Yeah.
I'd probably say it's my third favourite Hartnell Dalek story.
Oh, that's interesting.
I prefer the chase and Dalek's master plan to this.
Right.
Which seems a bit scandalous to say.
I was reading a lot of memos. Oh, say again?
Or the Dead Planet, rather.
I think the Daleks, aka the Dead Planet, aka the Mutants,
an exciting adventure,
or an exciting adventure with the Daleks, I think is objectively, subjectively is my opinion, but I think it's the best of the stories. I think well, it's just it invents it all. It's the Daleks are perfect in it. The voice. That's one of the problems with this. I think they've
only got modulation in 2 scenes where it works when you've got Barbara and Jenny being captured, and then the sort of POV of the Dalek coming in episode 6.
Exterminate them at zero range.
Yeah.
At zero range. That's the Nick Briggs inflection, isn't it? That sort of that rising inflection at zero range.
And they're not quite Daleks in this. It's sort of proto Daleks because the lexicon's not there yet for what we know what Daleks are. With like the exterminates, it's a lot of kill, kill, kill.
Kill
There's
him.
always something quite chilling about that distinction, though, rather than the usual exterminate.
Do they say exterminate? They start saying. I think this is the story because they don't say it at all as an imperative. I'm going to turn the camera back.
I mean, you have towards the end the only
in the Daleks. But this is the story where they start saying exterminate, don't they?
I'm not sure. I can't think of a specific instance of them saying exterminate.
I'm sure I noticed them saying it today.
Towards the end, they have the "I will arrange for their exterminations," which sounds like the Dalek's got to fill out paperwork before he can go and shoot Barbara.
Well, I know that's hilarious, that isn't it? That's because why wouldn't they just shoot Barbara when she's doing that ludicrous impersonation? What she does is that what she does the
yeah.
Oh man.
It is preposterous that they don't just shoot her on the spot, but they have got to fill in forms, obviously, haven't they, at this point?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Loss of workers.
They've got to
get their tax write-off.
They've got to send them off to hold those neck braces against their throats that obviously are going to fall off if they don't hold them on. I think on the extras they say that they were sent out to get some little. Somebody says that they didn't know how to attach them, so they sent them round to Woolworths to get some little magnets, which didn't work. It's just tiny little magnets, so that's why they're quite clearly holding them up. Yeah, the voices, the modulation is perfect in the Daleks, and then it's deteriorated in this story, I think. So they sort of see
it changes episode to episode with this one.
I remember Nick saying when he first heard that scene in Who's Doctor Who, he was going, "What's that? That's rubbish." the scene with
it's
Hartnell.
Funny watching
Obey us all, die. Yeah,
and Janet Fielding pointing out, the Dalek modulation not being right.
It got a lot better.
They've obviously not got it yet.
Yeah.
And you're there going, "No, Janet, they got it right before this."
Yeah. She appealingly likes the black and white, doesn't she? On the behind the sofa.
Yeah, there's something about it which she's not wrong.
No, absolutely. And I think I think the aesthetic of this story, particularly the film sequences, is astonishing and must have been at the time.
I mean, it's the first real.
It gives scale, doesn't it?
It's a culture shock if you watch them, with that mindset of trying to wipe your mind of what you've seen later. If you watch all of season 1, and then see this, it's an astonishing sort of step up in terms of production value, isn't it? Having all that, all of that location stuff, when there's been almost, I think there's a tiny bit in Reign of Terror, and it's just Brian,
and that's not even Hartnell, that's his body double just walking along.
They don't have to pretend being out of puff and out of breath.
Yeah. But suddenly it's very, very cinematic. And
it certainly feels like this is when they knew they had a bit more of a success on their hands, I suppose. It feels like the first acknowledgement of that, go back into it. It feels like there's money now being pumped into.
Well, they realized how popular the Daleks were, and they brought them back, and nations come up with the great idea of putting them in our world.
Yeah, on your doorstep.
And so I think, let's capitalize on that and do all this location stuff. And the location stuff is terrific.
I think that's when the story's at its strongest, really, for me.
I agree.
I love part 1. I think part 1 is a very strong. I mean, it's often the way with the Hartnells or black and white in general. People will cite that it's a very strong part 1, and then so after that.
Well, it's just so fantastically bleak, isn't it?
it sets
And
up that whole dystopian world
mm,
very well. Like
mm.
you feel like something has happened. There's like a stillness to the air while watching it
I
that
mean,
makes
the
you
whole
wonder
thing is
what's happened to London.
steeped in a sort of in a really disgusting sort of taste of decay. Taste of Decay. That's a good title. And having all that, because I mean, this is 1964. London is still a bomb site from World War II in the 60s. So you can use the fact that you've got and of course the Daleks are, as we've discussed, the obvious metaphor for the Nazis, but the fact that you've got all the devastation of World War II to use as a location is fantastic. So all that, so that's a deserted, bombed underground in episode 1 where they're running around. Is it still episode 1? Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is when they go through the wastelands and stuff.
And I think my favorite
nuclear industrial.
There are several shots that I just think are remarkable, and one of them is the two Robomen. You see them sort of down the end of the alleyway with the Thames behind them, and the building. I think it's Battersea opposite. And then when they stop and turn in unison simultaneously, such a chilling image. And then they turn and move on again.
I think a lot of that has been redeveloped now, hasn't it? Sort of
it's all well, rather like Shad Thames, where Resurrection of the Daleks was shot. That was that wonderful sort of urban Gothic, post-nuclear industrial Gothic landscape is now sort of all very expensive flats. So
that was sort of standing in for itself in the 80s. That was a literal representation, whereas this is extrapolating it to 200 years in the future after an alien invasion. But it works so well.
Yes,
and
but I mean, it looks
question that it's 200 years in the future either.
Well, I suppose there's a nice marrying of the science fiction with the metaphor. So the metaphor is that the Daleks are the Nazis, and the very same year that Doctor Who started, there was a film called It Happened Here, by a wonderful genius filmmaker called Kevin Brownlow, which was about what would have happened if the Nazis had won the war. And they used location footage of London in the early 60s, with German soldiers strutting around, etc. The location footage in that film looks very similar to the location footage in this. Worth checking that film out because it's almost exactly contemporary with this. No, you don't.
You get that with like the destruction of knowledge, don't you? This idea of setting humanity back in order to keep them in the dark to stop them from fighting.
Elaborate on
that. Well, it's all a way around it. The idea that the Daleks have been subjugating. You've got little teasers of world building in there, like the moving pavements and the astronaut fair in Chelsea Heliport. Which little bits like that that trickle throughout that you just sort of led to assume.
I think that they're the only sort of references, aren't they, made to what 2164, which is presumably the year, because that's when the diary. That's obviously it's not still 2164, is it? Because that's the last time you see a diary. But
presumably it was 2164 when the Daleks invaded.
When they invaded,
if that factory hadn't been closed, how long before that anyway?
We can but speculate. But it's those two women in the cottage. There's a Hansel and Gretel cottage. Are the only actual references to specifics of what the future world was like, aren't they?
And that feels again very much like a callback to the Daleks' Nazi origins, with them sort of selling out Barbara and Jenny to the Gestapo in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
There's definitely a feeling of, regular people in Nazi Germany handing over Jewish people trying to hide, or anyone that the Nazis were after. It does feel like it's Terry Nation bringing that into his Dalek occupied world. And I think there's something that's always fascinated me about that scene. That is quite, it's one of those ones that preys on your mind, gives you food for thought for a while. And I've always wondered, were they close enough that they got destroyed by the volcanic explosion? Did they die in the valley? Or
you've thought that far ahead about the fate of those characters. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I was sort of like wondering.
Yeah.
I always assumed that they did, but then actually, as I got older and we watched it more, I realized it's never explicitly shown either way whether they would have done or not. So was that just me thinking of a comeuppance for them, or do they, in a way, get away with it?
But it's a very interesting aspect of this story that you have different perspectives. So we have our heroic freedom fighters. We got the likes of David Campbell, who's such an extraordinarily brave and moral character, and we got dear old wheelchair user Dortmund with his crazy, rather foolish approach to terrorist bombing. Well, you've tested them. No, of course I haven't tested them.
It's all
I don't need it. It's all there in my formula. I know it will work. Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. And then so we've got those predictable characters, I suppose, the freedom fighters, but the more sophisticated multiple perspective of having the collaborators, those two women in the cottage, and as has been frequently the question frequently been asked, what would we have done had we been ordinary people in Nazi Germany? The pressure on individuals to conform, and the risk you take to challenge a regime like that. So all those people in Nazi Germany, and of course, pre-war, there were more assimilated Jewish people in Germany than any other country in Europe, and so many people would have been, socializing with Jewish people, etc. But suddenly there is this directive: no, you can't, and then that gradual move, and the business is shut down, then the ghettos before the Holocaust, the final solution, etc. What would you and I, what would the three of us have done if we were ordinary people with families, and your priority is to protect your own? What do you do? Do you stand against it? Do you become a dissident, or you just go, okay?
I mean, you'd like to think you would, wouldn't you? But push comes to shove.
Well, as the question's been asked, very few of us would have the balls, or to stand up against it, and that is an ethos that it happens frequently anyway with things that perhaps viewpoints that become orthodox even in our society that you might, but it's to put your head above the parapet and say, well, I don't agree with that. These things happen that happen in any society, but when something's as terrifying and as monolithic as Nazism, how few people have the spine to stand up against it is it's a perennial question, isn't it? So
it's interesting. Take it to an even further extreme with these women in that they are starving, as with most people.
Yeah,
and that's often sort of recurred throughout as well with the black marketeer. Who comes to the camp, and you've also got the references to other scavengers as well.
Well, there you go. So
who's the David saying, not all humans are automatically allies. Someone's killed for a few scraps of food. And so with that extreme thrown in as well, you've got this dilemma of, do they look after these people and then, end up getting caught anyway and all go to the mine? Or do they sell them out, which they could get caught anyway, and then gets a bit of food along with it? And it's ultimately the Daleks forcing them into that situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So certainly it makes you. It's hard to judge.
But the the relative sophistication of Terry Nation's script in these early stories is very interesting. That you have these multiple perspectives. You've got those collaborators. You've got the, as you say, the Black Marketeer character. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to rewatch the film, because it's Philip Maddock playing that part in the film, isn't it? And I think his performance is super. That's one of the standout, perhaps the standout performance for me in that film. The bloke playing it in this is good. So it's called Patrick O'Connell. I think he was later in The Brothers, the series with Colin Baker. Was one of the principal characters in it. But I think Maddock brings a sort of a wonderful, layers and nuances to it that Patrick O'Connell doesn't quite know, though he's quite charismatic.
It's charismatic, but surface level, isn't it? Really, it's strong,
but it's not. Yeah, but it's not. It's not the rounded human being that Maddock makes him. Yes, it's interesting how bleak Doctor Who managed to be so it's establishing itself, as there's a wonderful bit on the commentary where Lambert says, it's lovely looking at the memos. She's always referred to as Miss Lambert has requested this. I spoke to Miss Lambert today. It's so wonderfully sort of still 1950s, the sort of the lexicon. But on the commentary where they're talking about the approach to the ethos of the making of the thing, she said, I would have come down like a ton of bricks on anybody who ever was flippant with it or sent it up or treated it anything less than the most serious piece of drama you were making, which was the same with Barry Letts saying that was his remit to the directors. You treat this like it's the play for today, the Wednesday play, Hinchcliffe, etc. And then, of course, the tone changes. That's not the approach when Williams comes along, and the tonal variations in the Revive series are very interesting. Very interesting watching this today after having watched The Church on Ruby Road yesterday. And you're going, is this the same program? Not that I'm saying anything remotely disparaging about what was on last night, but it's not. It's a completely different sort of.
Yeah, the 60
it's a different world.
Certainly a fair few.
Completely different. There's just the sheer relentless dark bleakness of it. Just scenes that every time you watch something like this, there'll be a few lines that you don't remember or you hadn't noticed as vividly as you do this. So when they're talking about what happens to the Robo, what happens to the hang on a minute, what happens to the Robo men? What happens to the Robo men? He says, well, they go mad and they dash their heads against the walls. We see one of them throwing himself into the Thames. But this is so sort of bravely bleak for a children's program, isn't it? To go that dark. We just for one concept, the concept of the Robomen themselves.
Surprising that they never were used again after this.
Well, the Cybermen.
Yeah.
But I'm always delighted when things aren't used again. So many things shouldn't have been used again. Sequels are often a mistake, aren't they?
Not this one, though.
But they're very. This is a sequel, yes. But the Robomen 2 was. But I love the fact.
Or is it a sequel?
When I first saw it's a prequel, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it just another Dalek story?
Yeah.
Because there's a sequel more.
I know. I was just referring to the fact that this is actually a million years before the Daleks, according to William Hartnell in episode 2, isn't it?
Yeah. But then that all gets thrown out the window much later. Because
they mastered interstellar space travel and the technology to mine the core of a planet and planet around the universe, but a million years later they're stuck with going around like dodgems using static electricity.
Is this before their million-year war as well?
It doesn't really bear a lot of scrutiny, does it? So that conceptualization.
I mean, I more see it as Hartnell just doesn't know really.
But I love. Well, yeah. But I love.
Because later you've got Planet of the Daleks, which is explicitly set in the 25th century, because it's following on from Frontier in Space, it's set around the same time. And with that, you've got the Files there, explicitly after the attack on the Dalek City, which has happened long enough to go to be ancient history.
I was
which would place the
rereading.
Daleks
Yeah, I know.
Long before this.
Just to sort of cut through all this speculating, I was rereading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein last week, and there's a moment where the monster is reading Milton's Paradise Lost. It's astonishing how sophisticated and complex that novel is when you think of what people think of as Frankenstein, and how literary it is. But there's a moment where the monster, for the first time, is able to distinguish between imaginative fiction and reality. So he knows, oh, I see, this is a poem, this is made up, this isn't about real things, but that these things that happen to me are real. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? This is a distinction that a lot of Doctor Who fans have yet to make. And that, as you said, Luke, at the beginning of was it the review of The Giggle? This is all made up. None of this actually happened. But it's kind of adorable in a way that so many Doctor Who fans feel the need to treat it all as though it is historic. This is the mistake that religious
people pigeon boxing, isn't it?
I mean, I was brought up a Catholic, and I still regard myself as sort of culturally Christian. But I think I cottoned on by the age of 12 that the Bible was fables, metaphors. None of these things happened. They're stories that instruct us about how we should conduct our lives. Big psychic novels, that's what religions are, as our television series, Don't expect it all to make sense.
No.
Well, hang on a minute. If that happened in this story, how can that? Doesn't matter. It's a television series is made by a succession of television professionals, many of whom have very little regard or knowledge of what happened before the 3 years that they were doing
this era as well, when it's only made to go out once and then never be seen again.
Exactly. So they're not expecting anybody to be paying a lot of attention to what happened before. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Continuity is what
they won't remember.
Be expected to remember.
They won't remember. But as regards things like The Timeless Child, when I saw The Brain of Morbius in January of 1976, I was so excited, and still am, by the idea that the William Hartnell Doctor wasn't the first Doctor. When I saw those faces, and it's quite clear in episode 4 of The Brain of Morbius that they are supposed to be earlier Doctors, and Hinchliffe said, yeah, they were, because Morbius says, as you see the faces, how long, Doctor? How long have you lived? Back to your beginnings. And those are the faces you see, and I think, oh my God, he wasn't the first. There's all these other blokes. Brilliant. All that is important.
And then you watch any Hartnell story, and there's clearly no intention of regeneration at all.
No, exactly. Yeah. But I was stimulated by that idea that why should he have been? All that's important is that William Hartnell was the first actor to play it. But why we should be sort of constrained or trapped by the idea that he has to be the first Doctor. I'm not suggesting that The Timeless Children was the best sort of articulation of what might have come before, but that's
constantly changing.
That's a discussion for another day.
View of it.
But the great thing, the reason why the bloody program survived all these years is because it keeps on changing and is capable of infinite variety and an infinite number of parallel narrative strands, that can conflict with each other. It doesn't matter that it doesn't fit, as long as it keeps on being fair. There's a lovely conception of Rob Shearman's with Doctor Who has constantly been saying, if we do, people who are making it, the imaginative people who are making it, if we do this, will it break? And because you can't break it, or you might make it unpopular for a bit and maybe go off for another couple of decades, but it'll always come back because the conceit is so strong, the central ideas are so strong. You see, that's
so
the
malleable.
wonder. Aren't black and white images so powerful? I mean, that
Particularly the film. Yeah,
that looks like a shot. There's a fantastic film which I recommend you or anybody who's actually bothering to listen to this to a black and white, great silent film called Battleship Potemkin, which was made in 1925. There's a famous sequence called the Odessa Steps sequence, which is watch it, and it's basically the soldiers of the Tsar massacre all these ordinary people on the Odessa steps. And the last time I saw it, there's this wonderful sort of rhythmic way in which the soldiers are marching down the steps with their bayonets, and the way in which militarism turns human beings into robots. So they are all human, are clearly human beings. If you're in an army, you're just doing a job. And there's a wonderful thing. Watch that and you go, oh yes, the Dalek-like nature of human beings when they have weapons and they all are dressed the same and they've got
when they're just a cog in a machine,
that purpose in mind. Yes, exactly. And there's a sort of famous series of images in that 1925 film, and there's an old woman with glasses like Dortmund's, and she's shot and there's blood pouring down her face, and because the power of black and white when it's beautifully shot. And there's that wonderful scene when Dortmund stands up to throw the bombs, but then that extraordinary shot when he's lying dead. When they drive out, and he's just lying there, and there's something sort of a great pathos about somebody dead with glasses on. I don't know why particularly, but it's a beautiful shot, though, isn't it? Because he's in focus, but they're in focus, sort of driving out of the depot, and it's one of those beautiful images in this story. There's so many of them, I think.
Oh, that's another example. Go back to something we were talking about probably half an hour ago now.
Yeah,
about the way it gets around being in the 2160s, despite being filmed in the 1960s.
Yeah,
is the fact that the vehicle they're using is from a museum. It's like an old motor museum, so they get away with it not being a futuristic car.
Oh yes,
having it literally be a thing from the past.
That's right. Yeah. That's which is very convenient.
Clever way around it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so on the commentary, somebody says, well, how come it's got petrol in it? And then almost immediately there's a bit of dialogue where Barbara or Ann Davis, what's the name of the character? Jenny. Says, I think they must have left. They were left in working order in the museum. So so that answered that question.
Pity all the motor cars are on the upper floors. They say.
Is that what they say?
Yeah, they do it.
Oh right, do they?
So it's like a tease that they could go zooming along.
I'm just going to leave you talking for a minute. I'll be back in a minute. Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going up to Bedfordshire in a Ferrari?
I mean, hopefully that'll be a bit quicker and avoid the saucer. Hopefully.
Well, yeah, you could have an exciting chase sequence where the saucer's like blasting, but it can't quite hit them.
In the Pertwee era, would have had that.
Oh, yeah, the Daleks also would have gone straight into the heat barrier.
Literally, yeah, it would have done.
Yeah,
that'd have been cool. What could have been?
What's one of your standout moments of this story then? What's something that really jumps out to you while watching it?
I think it's got to be part 3, the whole sort of chase sequence.
With the
yeah, the constant drumming of sort of feet along the ground. But I love the quieter moments at the end of episode 6 with the Doctor and Susan about the shoe.
Yeah,
I mean, brilliant.
Yeah, they both go to settle down without shoes on.
Yeah, I mean, poor old.
I wonder if that was an intentional parallel on Russell's part in the gig.
Maybe. Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
so, grandfather and granddaughter. But yeah, it's wonderful how the story does wrap up. Like 5 to 10 minutes early to have that farewell scene, whereas later on a farewell would very much be tacked on, or even not done.
70s,
really.
yeah, sort of late 70s. Yeah, you definitely get. It's an afterthought. Oh yeah, we've got to get rid of these now.
Yeah, because you'd think there would be a logical progression of that as you go from 60s to 70s to 80s then to the new series. But actually, with a lot of things, it does feel like the 70s is a bit of a step back in some ways, or particularly late 70s, in terms of that emotional connection to it. A lot of new series fans sort of will describe
It has to be a moment,
Classic
doesn't it?
Who as emotionless, also, which is an unfair criticism of it in many ways when it comes to moments like Susan's farewell, which doesn't even have the music to back it up at the end there. That's quite a
No.
heartbreaking little piece. But at the same time, it is a fair criticism to have of departures like Leela's. Yeah. So I think there's always a grain of truth to these things. But, once you peel away the surface, there's many more layers to be found. I think in terms of, representation for women, the 60s probably does, or certainly early 60s as well, perhaps because you've got Verity Lambert heading up the show, is superior to a lot of what's to come in the 70s. Ultimately, less so Susan, but Barbara is often, very much a leading figure driving the story forward. Like, particularly in this one, as she's pushing forward with Jenny to get up to Bedfordshire. She's the one who has the idea to turn
Get
the
the
Robomen against the Daleks. That's all down to her, and she very nearly succeeds by herself in doing so.
Is this Barbara's the agency of Barbara Wright?
Yeah, very much.
Mm.
That's where we got to in the discussion now.
Well, this is my sort of one of my main sort of discoveries in the last sort of 2 years of looking at this era in detail, of the remarkable significance of Barbara Wright in the first year of the program. The sort of the heart of the first season is the story, sort of the center of it is the Aztecs and the significance of Barbara in that story, but her significance in the Daleks, in the first Dalek story, it's she that sort of is, unlike in the novel where it's given to Ian, but it's she that has all the sort of the intellectual persuasive arguments about how they have to persuade the Thals against their pacifism, because the Daleks will come out and they'll come out and get us all eventually. So you can't be pacifists when there's Nazis around, because this was such a sort of a strong conception, of course, in the aftermath of the Second World War, that and of course, this idea, when people sort of rather lazily say, oh, the Doctor's a pacifist, of course he isn't a pacifist, because he desires war, he desires peace. But you can't always have peace. Sometimes, and the most famous Troughton speech is, there are some corners of the universe that have bred the most terrible things. They must be fought. So there's a sense of, there are times when fighting is absolutely essential. But it's Barbara who has all the most, cogent, intellectualizing arguments in the Daleks about how they have to fight, and then of course, which then impels or inspires Ian to play the trick with Dione, and so I'm going to take it to the Daleks, which sort of shocks the. Was it Aladdin? The
leader.
The Thal out of his pacifism. Really, there are some things worth fighting for, but it's her humanity, her compassion for the caveman in the first story is an essential part of the meaning of that story. When Partnell's just about to brain the caveman with the rock, and then it's she that comes up with the solution in Edge of Destruction, and it's that conversation that she has with Hartnell at the end of Edge of Destruction, which is the beginning of the humanizing of the Doctor,
which then eventually leads into the start of this story, where you have that encounter with the Daleks, where he goes, "I think we better pit our wits against them and defeat them." That first real standing up to evil for the sake of standing up to evil, not just getting out of the situation alive.
That's right. The transition from him as mere sort of scientifically curious explorer of the universe, whose scientific quest for knowledge is his only real motivating factor, apart from his protective relationship with Susan.
He's never quite immoral, but he's certainly amoral.
He's amoral,
long
definitely, definitely, and actually at times, I mean, there's a wonderful line in the first chapter of great first TARDIS scene that Terence writes in this, but his description of the Doctor, the oldest was a man who appeared to be somewhere in his 60s, though in reality he was in his 50s. No, he was very much older. He wore check trousers, a frock coat, and a long black tie. He had flowing white hair and a proud, imperious face with more than a touch of ruthless cunning. Is rather a nice phrase, isn't it? You know, and that's not a phrase that, you know, revived series fans would immediately spring to their mind as what the Doctor's about: ruthless cunning, ruthlessness. But the Hartnell Doctor is ruthless, and it's Barbara that humanizes him, or starts to make him more like the more conventionally heroic figure that people assume. They assume he's always been, but he's always on the side of right. You know, and
it's sort of again that idea of the show constantly changing.
But it is,
it does start very differently.
I think again, it's my sort of argument in favor of the coherent ethos of 1963 to 77. There's some intelligent ambiguity about the program and the writing of the Doctor that even with Barry Letts introducing the idea that the Doctor still has this, his main motivating urge is scientific curiosity, and that the whole business of Planet of the Spiders. It's his greed, as he himself admits, that's led to the problem, and he has to face the fact that he is as acquisitive in his way as the monstrous Great One Spider, and he has to face. So the Great One Spider is in Barry's Buddhist conceptualizing the Doctor's doppelganger.
It's interesting. Just thinking about this for the first time. Robert Holmes never wrote anything in season 9, did he? Like he did Spearhead from Space.
That's his missing
Terror of the Auton.
Pertwee year. Yeah.
And then it was Carnival of Monsters next. So the only two stories he wrote during the exile are the two where he's really trying to get away by any means necessary. They are the more, in some ways, a bit rude in terms of him trying to escape and leaving Earth in the lurch a bit.
Carnival of Monsters and Time Warrior?
No, the exile ones. Spearhead from Space. And
I see what you mean. So the first two.
Yeah, while Robert Holmes is writing him in his exiled time.
That's interesting.
That's where he is a bit more morally ambiguous and is arguably just trying to up and leave and doesn't really. Or thinks Earth could take care of itself at the very least.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, it's probably difficult to work out whose thinking was behind all that, isn't it? At that time, because they're very early. Those two stories, aren't they?
Yeah, but I can't really think of any other examples of the Doctor except Claws of Axos. Actually, that's the only one.
Claws of Axos is very interestingly ambiguous. Yeah, the Pertwee Doctor. I mean, of course, you've got Terence Dicks there who vehemently disagreed with Barry Letts, suggesting that the Doctor was anything but a straightforwardly heroic, entirely morally good character. So that was Barry. It was a lot of nonsense, really. He was a Doctor. No, the Doctor's always on the side of right. But I think it's more interesting if there is that darker shadow, Jungian shadow side of the Doctor. That there's more going on there, which I felt was at its most sort of not ever explicitly stated, but just the way that Tom Baker is sort of the demonic aspect to Tom Baker's the way he plays it in those early in the Hinchcliffe stories.
What's the story
coldness,
where
the coldness of Pyramids of Mars, the coldness of kicking the Tesh against the wall and electrocuting him in face of evil, the coldness of flinging Greel into the distillation chamber, the coldness of poisoning Solon with cyanide gas, the violence of beating up the chauffeur and nearly breaking John Challis's neck, etc. You know,
what is the story where, you know, a companion says, "Being with you, I can't tell what's right and wrong anymore." I think it's Planet of the Ood, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Donna. Yeah,
the Doctor says, you know, it's better that way. People who are certain are usually more like Mr. Houtman. You know, there is that idea of if you are certain about right or wrong,
yes,
maybe you should be questioning yourself and more.
Well, there's a wonderful
questioning.
There's a wonderful philosopher called Alan Watts, who was a great expert on the philosophy of the psychological theories of Carl Jung. And Carl Jung's, I went to a psychotherapist, and she was a Jungian psychotherapist. And I was talking to a doctor, and she said, Jung would have loved Doctor Who. Because Jung is all about the shadow aspect, that we all have the capacity for evil within us, and it's only by assimilating the shadow, the dark side, that you become a fully rounded human being.
Oh.
And there's a fascinating lecture by this 60s philosopher Alan Watts, who was greatly influenced by Carl Jung, about the danger of pointing the finger, going, "Oh, there's the racist over there. There's the homophobe. But I'm not." You know, that virtue signaling. That's sort of seeing yourself as morally virtuous and always seeing the bad out there. It's only by acknowledging
we all have our own biases, much as we may wish to reject them.
It's only by recognizing the capacity for prejudice, for whatever it is, wrongdoing, evil doing, if you like, in yourself, that you can actually become a genuinely moral person.
It's like there's a difference when you could be called out for doing something wrong. How you then respond to that is arguably what counts more. If you point the blame back at other people, or if you take the opportunity to look at it yourself, and use it to grow.
That's why I what I responded to so much as a kid, watching Planet of the Spiders and reading the novelization of Planet of the Spiders, just recognizing the value of realizing that we are all capable of. There is no such thing as a good person and a bad person. There's no such thing as a saint or a demon. We've all got those capacities in ourselves, and it's a dangerous society or a culture which encourages people to point the finger over there and scapegoat and project the negativity onto other people. There's one of the things that I talk about, so the metaphorical value of Christianity for me. I never believed. I think I must have been when I was very, very tiny, but the whole meaning of taking the parable, like taking the plank out of your own eye before recognizing the tiny speck in somebody else's eye. That it's a healthy society where individuals recognize their own capacity for negativity, and that was what was so wonderful for me about the Barry Letts era of Doctor Who, that because he's incorporating Buddhist philosophy into it, which influenced Jung, the concept of the shadow aspect, which of course then finds great articulation in Kinder, which is, for my money, one of the most sophisticated pieces of writing in the history of Doctor Who. But that's a discussion. That's a discussion for another day.
Well,
again.
Funny enough, there is a Big Finish story as well about literally meeting characters meeting their own shadows.
Oh, really?
Yeah, called Shadow Planet, a Seventh Doctor story.
Written by?
Yeah.
Written by?
Una
James?
McCormack, I
Oh, yeah,
think,
yeah.
off the top of my head.
Right.
I'll double check that one.
But we've gone slightly askew as ever.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
because
sort of like
it's all-
along similar lines. You do have the Daleks, who are very certain of their
Yeah.
own morality in many ways. They view anyone that isn't a Dalek with that same lens. And so
it's that whole othering, isn't it? That they out there are bad. We are superior.
The Daleks aren't really questioning themselves or their own morals. They are certain within themselves in what they are doing, and that's partly what makes them such a dangerous foe.
This is the origin of identity politics is on the right. It's about white supremacism. This is a parable for that. So identifying in groups is always a bad idea. And this is the in group, that's the out group, etc. But yeah, this is the I think the resilience of this program for 60 years is obviously the fact that you can go backwards and forwards in time. So it's infinitely flexible in narrative terms. You've got a central character who, as they discovered 3 years after the beginning of the program, we could actually get another actor in and explain it in terms of the nature of his race. But beyond that, it's right at the beginning that they've done a story which is addressing such extraordinarily dark and important political themes. The whole concept of Nazism, that the Daleks are a metaphor for. Right at the beginning of the series, you have this series is going to address the most important political, social, psychological, philosophical questions of the 20th century. The whole 20th century was defined by war. 31 years of it. The first 31 is the First World War and the Second World War, sort of gap in the middle, but the First World causes the Second World War. It's defined by war. It was the world was nearly destroyed by those two world wars, and of course the bomb that came out of it. And the very first story basically says, what if that happened? What if we used that bomb? What would be? That's basically these are the questions these are the questions that Terry Nation is asking. What are the consequences of those ideologies, sort of bearing the darkest fruits of their implications,
and then bringing that ideology right on the viewer's doorstep for the follow-up story.
And here they are. Yeah.
I mean, back to the two ladies in their little hut scene again. One of the most terrifying shots of this story is the Dalek in that doorway.
Yes,
that is the one time it comes into a house.
It's the first time you see a Dalek. It's only see a Dalek in a human domestic environment, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like you've had them dominating the iconography. You've had their symbols all around.
You've seen them doing having their sort of tourist snaps, isn't it? All the major sort of historical monuments. Yes, but no, to see them, absolutely in that little cottage, must have been a very shocking moment. Of course, it's now problematized by the fact that it's such a sort of tatty little set, isn't it?
Maybe wobbles quite a little bit when the door opens. But I think the way that Jenny embraces Barbara in that really shows the full horror of what's happening to them.
Yes. No, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a good thing that they decided to go for a 6-parter instead of a 7-1 this time, though, because they probably saw that Terry Nation was going to say it in a mine and thought, oh no, he's going to do a whole episode about crossing a cavern again, isn't he?
Well, it's astonishing. It's astonishing how Terry doesn't bother to take on the implications of the memo about how low the budget is. Because it's like the whole thing is written as though it's got the biggest, but as though it's got Disney money, doesn't it? We got all this location stuff that he's written, and but I presume that must have been the commission. Okay, we're going to really go for it, so write it and we'll try and do it. Reading through the memos and the documentation. The chase was originally supposed to be 7 parts, I noted, with horror.
Oh, wow.
Round about the time they're making this, they're planning the chase, and there was one point it's going to be a 7-parter, Terry. But mercifully, they changed their minds. Although that's your favourite story, Ben, so perhaps you'd like an extra episode of the chase.
Absolutely.
I think you're going to really enjoy Fugitive of the Daleks because it's such an homage to.
I do prefer the Daleks overall, but I think maybe this is the more consistent of the two. Well, I think the Daleks definitely has a bit of a dip in the final 3 episodes.
You got the appropriately titled ordeal. And the defeat is woeful, isn't it? Really, the attack on the Dalek city at the end.
For like the criticisms of it being a slow, dragged out story, the ending isn't half rushed.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Much more well built too, and
I think the structure. I think this is better structure, isn't it? There isn't a really dull patch in it. There isn't. It
doesn't feel like it's being made up as it goes along, whereas
is that what it
the Daleks does.
No, there isn't a dull episode. There are important developments in each episode and powerful scenes in every episode. And so structurally, yes, it sustains itself throughout the episodes. And the episode where Hartnell was out of action because of the accident is a very good episode because that enables the David Campbell character to borrowing a lot of his lines. That makes the ending more plausible, doesn't it? Because we've got to know him better.
Funny, Tom Baker had a bit of a accident on set during Invasion of Time.
That you think they could have given Christopher Tranchel a few more lines there, and maybe,
probably he wouldn't have been any of the scenes for Leela Day.
Shall we talk about the end and the denouement, the famous farewell to Susan?
Yeah, I think because it's certainly a important note of this story, isn't it? The first departure. And
absolutely.
At one, holy moly, we are still going, says Sam.
We're
not at the 2-hour mark yet. We got another.
This is early days for us.
Yeah,
Mr. Bonk Cactus.
Yeah, thank you for joining us again.
Yes,
today.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's interesting hearing like the thoughts behind this, how they were going to handle the first writing out.
Yeah,
debating at one point whether they even needed to bother with it because there was the thought of, if we get cancelled at the end of the first production block, we won't even have to write her out anyway, and it'd just be all 4 of them going off into the sunset, presumably.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that William Hartnell and Caroline Ford were invited to spend a weekend in Cherry Nation's summer house.
Oh, is that right? I don't know this one. Right.
I don't know whether they accepted or not. It's on the booklet for the Blu-ray release. But it just says they were invited to spend that time with them. I don't know whether they actually did or not. But yeah, certainly it seems like a lot of care was taken into the writing out of Susan, which is so funny when you compare it to just a couple of years later. Dodo sends you her love.
Well, I mean, all those companions that are so easily dispensed with, aren't they?
Whereas this is very much, the DNA of the show was these 4. It's not yet just the Doctor that is the main figure. And it's the same with Ian and Barbara as well. The writing out there of these 2 original, their characters who were there from the start.
There's a lot of time. There's been a lot of consideration.
Yeah, but then you come to Vicky and it's much more all out of the old in with the new, which I suppose also comes down to the fact that it's very production doing it. She was there at the start with these characters.
It's Tosh and Wiles and then Lloyd that to start with that are very cavalier about. Oh, this one hasn't worked. Having a historical character from ancient Troy, that doesn't work. We'll just get rid of it now.
Getting rid of characters who weren't their own. There's the ones they've inherited, and I'm like, I don't want them. I want my own vision. Let's bring in the swinging 60s companions.
Yes. But whatever the thinking behind it, we can't know how what happens by accident, what happens by design. Whatever the thinking behind it, it's an okay exit for Susan. I think what sells it, of course, is the Hartnell speech in the TARDIS. I think
the fact that there is a building up of it across the story.
Well, there is to an extent.
I
don't really buy Susan and David's relationship much more than I buy Leela and Andred's, to be honest with you.
At least there's an effort taken with this one.
She's a good cook.
It's more like the concept of the
all they
the
do
idea
is
of
sort of
settling down.
There's a lot of business with a fish, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's the scene. The rest of it, and the scene, the drain pipe scene, as I call it, that just before the TARDIS scene, when she sort of runs over and grabs hold of a drain pipe, and they're sort of holding hands but not looking at each other. I find that I always lose concentration, and I have I've missed the David and Susan scene again. I'll have to rewind it so that I can analyze exactly why it doesn't work. But I so lost interest in it that I didn't watch it, so I'll have to watch it again because it doesn't work. But I don't think. But what does work is the sudden shock of Hartnell slamming the door and then.
I mean,
taking a shoe.
I think it's interesting the point
and
that
stealing her bloody shoe. I mean, it didn't even give her a shoe back.
No. But it comes just after Susan admits that she does love David. It's the Doctor waiting for her to make the decision between.
No, I know what
what
the thinking is behind it. I just don't believe their relationship.
Oh, no, yeah, I can see.
But the power of that speech and the way Hartnell delivers it, and I love the way that he's made the speech, and now Harry has to hurry to program the TARDIS to leave before he even has time to change his mind. So it doesn't hang about. He's just goodbye, Susan, and he's already on to doing the control. It's a lovely bit of acting, and of course it's so well known. Of course, it became far better known because of the Five Doctors. Because it opened the Five Doctors, so it became indelibly imprinted.
Earlier on as well, like when she's discussing with David about I've never stayed in one place at one time for too long. It's this idea that it's not just the love for him, but also perhaps that she is ready to give up traveling. She mentions at one point that grandfather's old, he needs me and such. And it's always like Hartnell, the Doctor sees himself as holding her back. He doesn't want her to stay just for him. He wants
I'm underselling actually the strength of some of the writing. There's a very good scene where David she's saying, "Oh, we can get out of here," and he goes, "No, I can't leave. I've got to stay and make this work.
This is my planet. I can't just run off the sea like on Venus."
And that's the thank you. You've usually got chapter and verse, haven't you? And that's quite a powerful scene and quite a powerful statement and a powerful, I suppose, concept within the program, isn't it? The necessity to stay and fight and be committed.
Do you think the romance not working comes down to the writing, acting, or is it just the fact that there's only so much time to really do any of that?
There's only so much time to shoehorn. I mean, I've had this conversation with a friend, a young fan who's grew up with the Revived series and is constantly surprised and quite sort of taken aback sometimes by just how cold and unemotional the classic series is compared to the Revived series. I mean, I think I've said this before about Jonathan O'Brien, my oldest friend, who had the Radio Times special in the Playground in 1974, ringing me up a few weeks into the series one, the Eccleston, going, "Have you seen the new Doctor Who? They keep bursting into tears every 5 minutes." But this sort of the emotion, the emotiveness of the Revived series is so much a part of its quintessence, isn't it? That it's all about how everybody feels, and it's so romantic with a small R and a capital R. Where the old series just had such a stiff upper lip. The most famous departure scenes, aside from this one, are the Joe Grant one. The Doctor doesn't even, hug her, gives her the crystal, goes out, has to leave the party. She nearly cries. The Sarah, leaving scene in Hand of Fear, as I've said, is emotionally devastating because they don't show their emotion. So it's left to us to cry ourselves to sleep, as I did that night. But it's because they sort of get close to saying something.
It's all in the subtext.
It's that just she says, "Don't forget me," and it's that wonderful exhalation that Tom does it. Oh, that's as far as it goes. Don't you forget me, and then they pull back from it. There's and it's all for me emotionally powerful because it's not got gushing and Murray gold all over it, etc.
You can hear it.
There's no incidental music on the Joe Grant leavings apart from diegetic music. And similarly in Hand of Fear. But with this, we do have incidental music. I don't think it quite works. I like the incidental music in earlier parts of the story, but I find that it's a bit syrupy here. That sort of strange organ music. However, the moment that I never get sort of the sense that I'm going to be emotionally affected by it in any sort of visible way, but the line that works is when he says he knew. David says he knew. He knew that you could never leave him. And that is very affecting. But it is remarkable, isn't it? The massive discrepancy between the classic series and the revived series in terms of the emotional expectations of the audience, or the amount of the fact that it was never. This is not unique, but one of very few rare moments where there was a love story in it.
Yeah.
And
I wonder what it must have been like for those who stuck around to the end at Longley, comparing this to the most recent departure of Nissa, which is very much last minute. Oh, I've decided to stay.
Well, but even for the classic series, it's actually quite sort of developed, isn't it? It's thought out.
Yeah.
I mean, there could never be. Andred and Leela is probably, after Dodo, one of the most perfunctory and risible. But I'm staying in East Space. Oh, okay, have the dog. Bye.
Yeah.
Is it runs it as second best. It's only because of the fact that it's in a sort of a sort of high art story, and Tom is
you can sort of
so
see
brilliant that they get away with it.
Bullet points of an arc there, though. The whole idea of her not wanting to go back to the Time Lords and this being a way out of that. But it's never. The ideas are there, but you have to pick up on them and connect the dots yourself.
All I can hear is the conversation in in Threshold House or whatever they were at the time, and Bidmead saying, "So how are we going to get rid of Lalla and the dog?" And Johnny, I don't care. Just get rid of them. I don't care. Just doesn't matter. Just get them out of the series. Okay.
Just have them sign divorce papers and go their separate ways.
So we don't really have the story being anything about it at all, But no, you can post de facto come up with explanations for it, and Tom sells it. I think you can see Lalla looking a bit pissed off about it.
This is her moment, and she's not got it.
Oh, right, okay, bye then. That she wasn't given it, but I think but they got better at it in the early Nathan Turner. I mean, they've been criticised for not emoting about Adric after Earthshock, but I think there's enough bloody emoting in episode 4 of of Earthshock and the silent credits to not get on with the next story. I think they've done that. We don't have to keep sort of. I rather like he wouldn't have wanted us to mourn. I don't actually find that sort of preposterous. Actually, it's all part of the way the old series was terribly English, and we don't just the best way of dealing with it is not to think about it. That's we had our moments of mourning, and now we move on.
I think that's what they call bottling up nowadays.
Oh, they talk such gibberish nowadays. But anyway, I didn't say that. Cut that out. Oh, it's live. It's me.
He's been caught out.
Yeah. No.
He's a jolly good smack bottom.
There's arguments to be careful. There's arguments to be made for different perspectives, aren't there? But there's I think I just in narrative television terms. Well, I personally find there's too much schmaltz in modern television. It's the Americans' fault, or British television trying to ape American television, or being influenced by the sort of emotional debauchery of the necessity of everybody. It's interesting. The word relatable is a very recent word. The necessity of relating to characters. What I found most relatable about the Doctor was that I didn't relate to him. And that wonderful phrase of Douglas Adams, do you think he's accessible? The closer you get to him, the further away he gets. But that's what's accessible. Well, what's fascinating is the fact that he's not accessible. So it was the remoteness of the program and the character that appealed to me. But
well, I think more the push is for the companion to be the relatable one, isn't it? It'd be the viewpoint even more, both in terms of
that was always the
world
that was the idea.
But also emotionally. Although that's all like extended too far to the fact that they all have to be from modern day now, and it's like you can have a relatable character who is from a different time or different world. Like
it's interesting,
something like Star Wars, where it's all, none of it's modern. It's all this far off thing, or any fantasy, Lord of the Rings and stuff. You could still find relatability in there with characters. They don't necessarily have to be from our exact world.
No, of course not. But the point I make about the Doctor is that wherever he's from, what I found appealing about him was that he was utterly unrelatable, unknowable, and completely and utterly different, and didn't have the same emotions. Certainly didn't have any sexual component that we would understand to his character. I even feel a bit queasy watching the Aztecs with Kameka. I've always felt that was a mistake, and I didn't like it with the. That was when I stopped watching it with Tennant and Rose, I suppose. That when it was becoming sort of like any other series with a central character who has a romantic relationship with his companions.
Well, then you got the funny story behind the scenes of the Five Doctors, where they were saying to Carol about how, we're thinking we don't want him to call him grandfather, because then people will think the Doctors had sex. And Carol just burst out laughing at the very.
It was that JNT that was so schizophrenic about this, because one week it's no hanky banging the toilets, and the companions have got to have costumes up to their necks, and then there was people complaining that they weren't showing enough flesh, and then so suddenly you got Nyssa taking all her clothes off,
giving the Doctor a kiss goodbye.
I think what's fascinating about the program is it is infinitely flexible, and you can try anything out with it. I have my preferences for the tone of it, the morality of it, but all power to it, trying different things. So of course, the female Doctor, the new this new phase of Russell T Davies. It's going to be fascinating to see how it pans out and how it pans out with the audience. And you try anything within the format, and different people's tastes will coincide, will chime with different eras of it. But it doesn't. The great title of the documentary, 1977, "Who's Doctor Who? Who does it belong to?" It doesn't belong to anybody. well, it belongs to everybody, it belongs to the entire audience. But at any given time, it belongs to the people who are making it, and for them to make it according to the precepts, their enthusiasms, the things that they think they can bring to it, which is what makes it new. Each new production team comes along with their own ideas and their own, it's what Hinchcliffe said. Wow, when he sort of got the job, he went, this program can go anywhere. We can do anything, and that's its strength, and it should. And each new show should come along and, of necessity, be in danger of outraging a whole sort of section of the audience. Try it out, give it a go. There are no rules, and nor should there ever be rules. I know how I like Doctor Who to be. I know just in terms of my taste, but that's foolish of me or mistaken of me to always want it to be Pyramids of Mars, Seeds of Doom, whatever you like.
It makes those stand out on their own right when you've got those other things mixed in.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. It was fascinating to watch the Church on Ruby Road last night and watch it and go, okay, well, this is
a new flavor,
different. Yeah, a different program doing different things. Well, what are the new ones? They're not making it for me now, nor should I expect them to. But
it's also interesting. Russell
they haven't been since 1977. No, but because and then it goes through phases like with the Moffat era, when the Doctor became more Hinchcliffian, I suppose, and the Doctor became more Victorian with Smith and with Capaldi, and it became more gothic, and I started to feel it was similar to the program I'd grown up with, and because my son was the age to be enjoying it at the time, so that was an interesting phase. But it's fascinating to watch it just as a cultural phenomenon that just goes through all these phases, and so it should. It should. If it got stuck in the Hinchcliffe ethos or any of it, it wouldn't still be going.
Nah.
Each new
it has managed 60 years now because of its versatility and the fact that it always keeps trying new things.
It died mainly because the BBC decided they didn't want it. That's why it died in the 80s, because they suffocated it. They were determined to get rid of it.
And ultimately, the way something like this survives this long is by bringing in new viewers all the time.
Yeah,
like specifically when if you go in 60 years and you're just appealing to those same viewers, they're going to start popping off at this point.
It's got to follow the zeitgeist, and it always has. Sometimes it's it's a few years late with the zeitgeist. So Patrick Troughton started having a Beatles haircut after the Beatles had started growing their hairs long. Their hair's long. Their hair long.
Well, there are multiple strands of hair.
John Pertwee. Well, in Italian girl used to say, when are you going to cut your hairs? She used to say, because in those European languages they always use it in the plural. The James Bond stuff with Pertwee comes sort of 10 years after the James Bond craze.
Yeah, I mean James Bond was started before Doctor Who was. Yeah, the movie. Obviously, the books started way before that.
But it is interesting how it has always it's taken notice of what's going on in the culture, or has been going on in the culture for years, and co-opts it into the program. And that's how it remains popular.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of going back to the point of it, the emotions here with Susan's departure, it's not the only emotional moments within this story, because you also have
the Roboman and the brother.
Yeah, Ian's traveling companion. What was his name again?
It was Baker. Is it him?
No, Baker's the one who gives them the flask and then gets exterminated by the Daleks immediately up, which is another. That's quite a brutal scene as well.
The one where you don't see him being exterminated. You see it from the POV of Susan and David.
Yeah, that's Baker. Oh no, Baker's after that, but it's around they're in the same place, aren't they? You've got that man running, going, "You killed my wife, my rabbit," and then he gets.
It's the rabbit that particularly got me, obviously. Yeah. If they said squirrel, I'd have had a nervous breakdown. But
then Baker comes along a bit later.
What happens to Craddock?
He gets turned into a Robo Man.
He does, doesn't he? That's right.
Yeah, and he's the one they throw out the chute. But who's the friend with Ian? The one who
I don't know what his name is. I know who you
dispose-
mean, but I can't remember what his name is. I thought that was Baker. That's Baker's somebody else. There's too many characters.
Is it Larry?
Is he called Larry?
Yeah, it is Larry, isn't it? But he doesn't really go by
Oh!
Larry. He goes by his surname.
Madison.
Oh, he's the one with the brother who's a Roboman in episode 5.
Yeah.
And they embrace and he gets shot by his brother and the brother says and the Robo brother says Larry.
Yeah, just as he dies.
That's right.
Yeah, which sort of, another surprising level of emotion from it. And
No,
also,
no,
it's a Shakespearean tragedy in there.
Well,
Reuniting
certainly, yes, certainly a lot of powerful melodrama, you know, and generally well written and reasonably well executed within the parameters of the program.
I mean, a lot of that mine stuff is quite impressive. Like all the footage they have specially filmed for it.
I'm just astonished by it.
Funnily enough, that we spoke about a while ago with season 8, where we were saying, "Oh, what's the first time a mine's actually been a mine?"
Well, I think we got to the nub of this, just didn't we? We did say it was this one.
Yeah.
That this is or the first time a quarry. It's a quarry.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first time a quarry is used.
When is a quarry a quarry? Yeah. This is the first time.
That's a quarrel.
Give me a moment. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. Hello to everyone who's still in the chat. I see Mr. Not Cactus, you are still rather active. Thank you for sticking with us.
Thank you. Appreciate
We're
it.
now 2 hours in. It's always wonderful hearing Stephen's insights into these stories, especially now diving into. So he was a bit trepidatious about the first Doctor era.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the same for all of us, really, because I think we've all stayed in our comfort place, really, where we know the story like the back of our hands, and then it's going to you're familiar with it, but you're not as familiar with it, you know.
No. Oh, I mean, for me, this is one I know like back.
Oh yeah, well for you, yeah.
Yeah, but for you, this is a bit more stepping out of your comfort zone. It's not your Pertwee.
No,
you can't cite this as part 3 being watched on a tablet of Spearhead from Space.
No, I can't do that. I can't. But you know, this story has its moments that, you know, put the show on the map, and it's a story that sort of just stayed in pop culture, isn't it? Because if you see like the photo of the Dalek on Westminster Bridge, that's in general pop culture.
I mean, recreated for An Adventure in Space and Time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
I remember that being like all over the papers and stuff back in 2013 when that was being filmed.
It's that image that sort of transcends almost Doctor itself, really, isn't it? That photo.
Yeah. I think certainly the time of cementing Dalek Mania as an event, really. You know,
because you get those cards like from the 60s, and it's always got that one photo of the Dalek on there.
Wishing everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, says Frank. Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all.
Yeah, this will be our last stream of the year, unless something bizarre happens. But I don't think. I think it's safe to say we're ending off with this one.
Yeah, which is quite fitting.
Yeah,
a modern classic.
Where are we now?
We'll just talk about how this is our last stream of the year, most likely.
Right. I think yes, we can talk about that later. I think we should wind up now, because we could talk about this till the cows come home, and no doubt we'll discuss it again at some point. But the surprise,
you already have.
The surprise I was going to spring on you earlier on, is a Hartnell quiz.
Oh okay. No!
Yes, which I wrote years ago for what's his name, Mark Elstob. And
Ethan Turley
and-
says,
oh!
myself, I give this a 7 out of 10. Need to give it a rewatch day.
who says that?
Ethan Turley does. Thank you for joining
Hello,
us,
Ethan Turley. Ethan, lovely to hear from you. I give it. Yeah, I don't know.
Should we give it a quick
a score? 1 out of 10.
Oh,
it's difficult because what would we give other stories is by comparison.
I'd
give it an 8 probably.
I'd give it.
I'd agree with that.
You got in. There's a previous score here from a previous quiz where Luke got 12 and Ben got 10.
Oh,
Ben,
how much
10.
is that out of?
God
Probably.
knows. God knows what it was
Speaking
on
of comparative scores, it's a bit.
Okay, I think there's a couple of questions on every story here of Hartnell's story.
Okay.
So you're up for this. So should we just go sort of Ben first, then Luke, and then if the one can't get it, they throw it over to the other one.
Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah, go for that.
And you can play this halfway through. Incidentally, you can play this at home.
Sister of Plenitude going to be the answer for one of them?
Keep track of your scores and let us know what you get at the end.
You've been watching another channel, Ben.
Yeah.
That was quite entertaining, a lot of that, actually. That was certainly parts of it were. Or do you disagree?
Would you like to give it a plug, Steve?
Put them in the comments.
You plugged us with them. You may as well plug them with us.
Well, no, this is Geeky Rambles. Go over to Geeky Rambles. The incandescently glamorous Shah, who runs a channel, they did a quiz with a number of me and a number of other people from largely from the Type 40 channel, and I'm ashamed to say I came second. But there were a lot of bloody revived series questions, but I did quite well on them. I did quite well. Okay, who's getting the first question then?
Ben.
Okay. This is relevant. What member of the cast of the first story, Unearthly Child, appeared in the second Dalek film? I'm going to have a cigar while I'm doing this, actually. As it's Christmas, yeah. Whose question is this, Ben?
Yeah, what was the question again?
Right. What member of the cast of An Unearthly Child, or rather the tribe of God, we want to call it, we're not talking about the regulars, appeared in the second Dalek film? It also appeared in you can give me the name of the character, you don't have to give me the name of the actor.
I mean, I would say Philip Maddock, but it's not that.
Well, that's a good cigar.
I have no idea.
Luke?
I'm going to say Tsar.
Nope. It's Eileen Way, who played Old Mother, and she plays one of the women in the cottage in the film. As you'll notice when you watch it next time, or you didn't notice today. Do I need this? No, I do, actually, yeah. I'll do that with it. Oh, that seems to have turned the torch off. How did that happen? Ooh. Come on, you bastard. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, there are two brothers in the Daleks. Whose question is this?
Mine.
Luke's question. Okay, there's one for Luke and one for Ben then here. Who's the heroic brother and who is the cowardly brother in inverted commas?
No, not coming to me.
No, me neither.
Well, Aladon is the heroic brother.
I thought he was the lead. Who's the leader one then? Because you got Temesis, who's the old.
Am I wrong? Because I haven't written the answers down here. Okay.
Oh, I thought Aladon was the leader, but I might be mistaken there.
Oh God, hang on a minute.
I'll have a look at the Daleks cast.
Look it up. This is going well, isn't it? Who's the cowardly brother? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Let's forget that question. It was Antidus, and I might be. Yeah. I thought
Antidus and Ganatus.
Sorry, I've written. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is Ganatus.
Yeah, and Antidus, and then Aladon. Yeah, he's the
Aladon's
leader.
Aladon's, yeah. Okay. Okay. Next question is, what's the name? Whose question is this?
I think mine. I think.
Now,
what is the name of the planet on the scanner seen in Edge of Destruction?
Not a sausage, because I've not seen a destruction for a long time.
no clue either.
It's the planet Quinis in the fourth
Oh,
universe.
gosh, yeah.
Didn't Big Finish do?
Yeah, they did a story, yeah.
There we go.
Okay, this is now we're on to Marco Polo. What is the name of the cave in episode 3, which is also the name of the episode?
Cave of 100 Eyes?
Nope.
Oh.
Ben?
No. It's not coming to me.
The Cave of 500 Eyes. I'm a bit of a stickler when it comes to these things. Okay, so what year is Marco Polo set?
This is your one, Ben.
1262.
Should we go for whoever gets it closest?
Yeah.
I'm going to go 1486.
Way out. Ben was closer, 1289.
There you
go. Which is actually round about the same time as the Crusade set. I hope that isn't a question. Okay. Whose question is this now?
I think yours, Luke, isn't it?
Yeah, mine now.
What does Marco Polo want?
To return home to Venice.
He does. What is the means whereby he intends
to give the TARDIS to Kublai Khan?
Yes,
get his favor.
All right. Well, I'll give you both. You both answered that correctly. Thank you.
We finally got one. Mr. Bob Cactus says you've got to be a real sweaty Who fan to know all these.
Well, never sweatier than me tonight, actually, I think, after this bottle of champagne and everything I was drinking last night. So
the cold sweats are coming out.
I'm looking forward to watching my sort of rather inebriated self back later. But it is Christmas, so we so rarely get a chance to celebrate. But this time we must. What is the name of the... It's too easy, but what is the name of the keeper character in the Keys of Marinus? And what does he keep? No, it isn't.
Whose is this one?
I don't know. Do you want it? I don't know whose it is. You'll have to keep account of whose question it is. Because it's all I can do.
I think it's the last one.
Read my own writing.
Yeah, we both sort of answered the.
Read my own writing from 10 years ago. Sorry, what's his name?
The keeper.
No. Keeper, you were able to join us. That's a story.
No, it's not.
As soon as you say it. Is heady, and I've already drunk more wine than a man of my responsibilities should. To be a consul and a father, I thought were duties enough. But now, once again, to be a husband and to Cassia. My husband is right. The wine has flowed fleet and obliterated. Can't even say it.
What's the keeper's name then?
Arbitan.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he keeps the conscience of Marinus. Okay. Well, you both got one each so far. You're doing brilliantly.
This one's yours, Ben.
Okay.
I hope he looks after Tremus better than he looks after the milker. He's all covered in moss. Name the Doctor's... Oh, this is... Well, I'd say these... Okay. Name the Doctor's fiancé in the Aztec. Whose question is it?
Ben's.
No. Cocoa. Drinking cocoa. That's all
Cocoa.
I've got.
This isn't the
Jamaica.
Mikado.
Jamaica.
It is Jamaica.
2-1. We're only 10 questions in.
Toy in the 70s. What other story does she appear in? Ben?
No clue.
People had thought she was married to the statue all these years she's been tending him. We were very close a minute ago.
Keep her sharpened.
Yes, she's Katura. I've just dropped the phone, which has got the torch on it. Just bear with me. Oh, there go the candles.
It's all falling apart.
It's all.
Wouldn't be one of our streams if it didn't, to be fair.
No. It's
a staple.
Oh, no. What is that?
Maybe do some staples, hold everything in place.
Maybe. But it's very 60s.
No Zabi have walked into the camera yet.
Right, I found the phone.
Nice.
Okay. So that was the Keys of Marinus.
The Aztecs.
Right. Sorry, that was the Aztecs. Yeah. What's the next story?
Sense rights.
It is indeed.
I don't think I'll get a point for that, though.
No, you don't. That wasn't the question. Just get the pen back. Okay. Okay. Right. In the Sensorites, there is a plant and an element that are essential aspects of the story in terms of, I suppose, the plot, you'd say. What's the plant and what's the element?
Water?
No.
No, I thought.
Well, water's a compound.
No, true.
But this is actually an element.
No, don't know it.
No. It's what they're afraid the Earthmen want from them. It's a rare element.
No, still not coming to me.
Molybdenum.
No, it wouldn't have got that.
That old chestnut.
As though I didn't see this story until I was in my 30s. I'd only ever seen it written down, and I didn't know. I thought it was molybdenum, but it is molybdenum, and the plant, which is poisonous. There's a clue.
Poison ivy.
Deadly nightshade.
Or
belladonna. That's what the water's been poisoned with. But well done, Ben, for referring to water. It didn't get you a point, but you get kudos. What year is the story The Reign of Terror set in?
We got to go whoever's closest gets the point again.
Yes. Let's do that.
I'll say 1860.
Good Lord. I mean, the historical... Go on, Ben.
I was going to say probably 1741.
Ben gets the point. It's 1794. What do they teach you kids these days? It's the French Revolution. Do you know what year the French Revolution begins? You should know this. 1789 is the year that the Revolution broke out. But the Reign of Terror is 1794. Also, because they started their own calendar, year 6, and in fact the month was Thermidor, which means the hot month, which is actually corresponds to our July. I hope you're taking all this down and remembering it. It's an education. this stream. Name, whose question is this?
Mine now, I think.
Name the missing episode of the Planet of Giants, or the one that they excised or condensed.
The Urge to Live.
Very good. As in losing, yes.
Mm.
Who directed Dalek Invasion of Earth? Ben.
Richard Martin.
Yes. Very good. Often disparaged and belittled, but I think he's a terrific director. People often say, "Oh, Richard Martin." I think you know, just the sheer energy of the direction, particularly the film sequences in this story, and he directs half of the Daleks. And I'm a big fan of the Web Planet, but that's a story for another day.
It seems like he was very passionate about it, like often having rows with Verity, but like passionate rows about getting things right.
He's astonishing. He was a young bloke. He was an actor who'd done the director's course, and he comes in. He's in his early 20s, and he's responsible for directing some of the most, enduring and well-remembered pieces of television of all time. And yet, Doctor Who fans still manage to have a problem with him. Typical. Who was Sidney Wilson?
Production assistant?
No. Ben?
Are we in the rescue now? I don't know.
We are.
Oh, is he the person who's tricking Vicky? No.
Go on.
He's Kequillian.
Yes, he is. Sidney Wilson doesn't actually exist, but rather like Leon Nittei or Neil Toynay. What's that about? That was anagrams of Anthony Ainley's name to disguise the fact that it was the character was the Master, to try and fool the audience that the actor playing Bennett wasn't also playing Kequillian. They invented Sidney Wilson. The actor playing Bennett is called Ray Barrett. They invented Sidney Wilson from Sidney Newman and Donald Wilson.
Okay.
And so it said in the credits, it said Kequillian Sidney Wilson. Cocky licking. Yes. Who was the Christian in the Romans? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think this one's yours, Ben, isn't it?
I have no idea.
I should know this because I watched it the other day.
He's the bald actor.
Yeah.
Who's plotting against Nero, and you see him. He holds a crucifix at one point. His name is Tavius.
Yeah, that's it.
There's a wonderful moment where Hartnell dries and leaves him with egg on his face. Because Hartnell forgets his line, and it looks like the actor playing Tavius has cocked up the line, but it's actually Hartnell's fault. It's very funny.
He's the one who's supposedly hissing all the time.
That's the one. Yeah. Must you hiss my name in every quarter? Is that the line? Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. Name the slave colony Balber is taken to in the Web Planet. Well, you were watching it today, weren't you?
Yeah. Is it Crater of Needles?
It is the Crater of Needles. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So there's a lot of ex-heroin addicts down there as well. So where and when is the setting of the Crusades? Okay, I want the century and the location.
13th.
Luke?
Yeah, I'd say 13th.
No, you're both wrong. It's the 12th century. and yeah, I'll give you Jerusalem. It's Palestine, but yeah, that's the same sort of place, isn't it? Okay. Whose question is this, Ben? These are your well, this is concerning one of your favorite stories. What are the different locations in the chase?
Iridius.
He skipped over the Space Museum in this.
Looks like it, doesn't it?
Sorry. Anyway, go on, Ben.
Iridius, Mary Celeste.
You're right, actually. Yeah, we've skipped over the chase. What a shame. Yeah, Iridius, yes.
Mary Celeste.
Yeah.
Empire States of New
Yeah.
York. Mechanus.
Yeah. And
the horror house.
Yes, I'll give you that. It's fine. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, it was.
That's it. Okay.
Closed by order of Peking.
Where was it supposed to be, the haunted house?
Peking, I presume.
No,
if
it's Ghana. It was the festival of Ghana.
Which
is interesting. Ghana was the first African country to be liberated from the British Empire in the 1950s. Interestingly, a remarkable character called Kwame Nkrumah, but that's a discussion for another day. What are the time meddlers' anachronistic elements? So the elements that reveal to the audience and the characters that he's not of the Anglo-Saxon age.
The watch.
Yeah.
Record player.
Okay. Well, you want one each there. Okay. Yes, the watch and the gramophone I've got written here.
Binoculars, does that count?
Does he have binoculars?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I've just got wristwatch gramophone, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
What does Bill remove from the Medalist TARDIS?
This your one, Ben?
Oh, is it? I want to say dematerialization, but
it's the dimensional circuit.
It's actually the dimensional controller. But you were close. What cult TV actor of the 60s played a Chumbly? Cult.
No idea.
You'd have to be a big fan of another series to know this. Another sort of very, very a highly successful and brilliant late 60s cult television series that Big Finish have visited.
Yeah, still not coming to me.
No, it was Angelo Muscat who played the butler in the Prisoner, who was a diminutive gentleman. Whose is the mission to the unknown? Is that Ben?
Yeah, Ben now.
Not a clue.
Whose mission is it to the unknown?
Mark Corey?
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to read my own writing. Okay, who is the Doctor mistaken for? 3-part question. Who takes him back to camp, and who is skeptical in The Mythmakers?
Is this one me now? Or is it... not a clue.
Ben? Who is he mistaken for?
Zeus.
Yes. Who takes him back to camp?
No idea.
It's Greek, and there might be a part of his body that might be considered to be slightly weak.
Achilles.
Yes. And who is skeptical? And the clue here is there's an epic written about him, which is based on his name. I actually played the part in a stage production. And he goes on lots of adventures, and he's given his name to a particular sort of lengthy epic story. And there's a very famous science fiction film with a word derived from his name. If you don't get it from that, you don't deserve the point. You'll kick yourself.
I will.
It's Odysseus.
Okay.
You're so near and yet so far with that point there, Ben. Never mind. What year is the Dalek master plan, Luke?
Someone in the 42nd century.
No. Ben.
Ben?
I'll go 52nd century.
No. Although Luke was closer, but I'm going to be pedantic about this one. It's actually 4000 AD, which sounds like a comic, doesn't it? Name of the psychopathic killer responsible for the death of Katerina. Well, actually, is he psychopathic? He's just desperate, isn't he? But on the way to desperate.
Yeah. Obviously, you're a bit more opinionated than your 10 years ago.
Well, I think I was being a bit lazy.
Well, that's a good adjective. That'll do.
Yeah. He's a bastard. Call him a psychopath.
No, I can't think of it.
Ben?
Nope.
His name is Kirkson. Whose question is this now? Ben's.
Yeah, Ben.
Who killed Brett Vian?
I want to say Sarah. It's not Sarah.
Say something.
No.
Sure.
I'll go on. I'll stick to Sarah.
You're right.
I was sitting there screaming in my head, going, Sarah!
No, it's Sarah.
I almost said, of course, he gets an easy one. He's struggling with enough.
Okay. Well, let's see whether you think this one's easy or not, Luke.
Oh,
Name the volcanic planet where the Doctor re-encounters the meddling monk.
Vulcanus.
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Ben?
No.
It sounds a little bit like a planet in a late Tom Baker story. That's a clue. That's as much as I'm going to give you.
Beglos.
Well, yeah, you're on the right lines.
Kraken.
No, it's called Tigers.
You must warn the Tigellans.
Absolutely. We mustn't be late for the Tigers. Is it?
I think there's multiple of them, isn't there?
We mustn't disappoint the Tigellans.
Yeah, that's it.
Something like that. I love Meglos. I'm a huge. I think Meglos is great. Whose question is this one?
Ben's.
Ben, how does Mavic Chen die?
Supreme Dalek.
What does he do to him?
He's
all I want is exterminate.
Exterminate.
You got the point. How are the Daleks?
Kill him.
Kill him. How are the Daleks defeated in the Daleks' master plan?
The time destructor.
With the time
pages
destructor. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely check out Fugitive of the Daleks, everybody. If anybody's listening, that's all I'm saying.
We got 6 people watching at the moment. Thank you all for sticking with us. Hope
okay.
you're doing better on this quiz than me and Ben.
Has timescales turned up yet?
No, not yet. Not yet.
We're probably not up yet. I don't know what time it is in Los Angeles this time. Well, sorry, no, it's San Francisco, isn't it? Same. Anyway, California. Okay, the massacre. What's the date of the eve of St. Bartholomew's Day massacre? Whose question is it?
Ben's.
1546.
Luke?
1620.
Ben was closer.
Oh.
Just 1572. Okay. It's a close run thing, this one. Who is the doctor visiting, or who does the doctor intend to visit? In fact, does in fact visit in the massacre?
The abbot.
No, he is the abbot. Well, he looks like the abbot. Can I just put a plug in for Fugitive of the Daleks, by the way?
Go for it.
Just saying, I've just done it. Go for it. I went for it. Who's next? Who's the doctor visiting?
Not a clue.
Yes, Ben.
The king.
No. Elvis Presley. Charles Presley. His name of the character. Charles Presley. Whose question is this one?
Ben's.
Destination of the Ark?
No idea.
No clue.
Refuses. The planet refuses.
We mustn't disappoint the Refusians.
Where does Dodo think they are?
Is this one mine?
I don't know.
The zoo.
Which zoo?
London Zoo.
No, it's going to be. It's a very specific zoo. Ben?
Highgate? I don't know.
Whipsnade Zoo. Okay. Name the surviving episode of the Celestial Toy. What's it called? Toy Room. The story or
Toy Maker. Toy Room is one of the episode titles, but it's not the surviving one.
No,
it's the first one. Ben?
What's the surviving one?
Final game?
Very close.
Final test.
It is the final test, yeah. Okay. Whose question is this?
Mine.
Okay. What is the date the gunfights are set in?
1860.
No, Ben.
1897.
Ben's closer. It's actually the 25th of October, 1881. So now you know. Name the planet in the Savages.
No idea.
Not a clue.
There's a reason for that, because it isn't named.
There's no name.
A trick question.
What's the name of the professor in the War Machines? Whose question is it?
I think mine now. Brett.
Yes. One of a small number of female directors working at the BBC in the 60s directed The Smugglers. What was her name?
No idea.
No, I can't remember.
She actually invented EastEnders, or she was the and she, I say a small number. I think it was just her and Paddy Russell were the two directors in the 60s. It was her name was Julia Smith. And she was one of the principal devisers of EastEnders in the 80s, and a terrifying, formidable.
She went on to direct
was
Underwater
too.
Menace, didn't she?
She did indeed. That's right.
Yeah,
Very
and
good.
that was it.
That was her other one.
Philosophy.
Yeah. And the last question is, whose question is this? Ben?
Mine now.
No, it's yours. Mine. It's mine. How did the Cybermen plan to destroy the world?
By they wanted to explode the Z-bomb before Mondas absorbed too much of Earth's
Is
energy.
that a bomb that releases loads of very young people?
Gen Z.
Very, very young, irritating, opinionated, censorious people. Yes, that's up with the Z bomb. Yes, yay, as they would say. Okay, so that is the end of it. And Luke got 11, and Ben got 8. So not too bad a showing.
You're much better with the dates, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think we shouldn't be too pedantic tonight. But we had a nice little chat earlier on. I'm quite tired. I've had 2 reasonably late nights, and so I think we should. How anybody still there?
We've still got a few people here.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
God bless them.
Thank you all for watching. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Stephen, for joining us. Really.
Well,
It's a pleasure.
it was my idea. So
yeah,
you know.
Thank you, me and Ben, for agreeing to do this with Stephen.
Thank
after
you.
suggested it.
Thank me, you and Ben.
And join us this year.
I mean, as this is sort of like the time for looking back and looking at what you were grateful for, I think I could speak for Ben here as well.
Yeah,
We're very
absolutely.
grateful that you've joined us for quite a few of these streams now. It's always wonderful chatting with you, hearing your insights. And,
I've always said, and I'll say it again, it's my pleasure and my privilege. And so thank you for providing the facility, because I enjoy it as much as you do, if not more. Nobody will ever know who enjoys it more.
It's hard to.
It's one of those unknowable,
of this.
enigmas, isn't it? There's that lovely line in Monty Python, Michael Palin, the quiz show host says, so if you've enjoyed yourself half as much as I have, I've enjoyed myself twice as much as you have. Good night. So on that note, I think we should say good night. But I want to talk to you two after we've finished.
Yeah.
See me in my office, lads.
No problem.
So what should we do? Well, should we finish this and then
we'll finish this now. I'll send a Zoom.
I'm going to go and use the lavatory, and then
It's a good idea.
And which is always a good idea. George V said, always go to the lavatory as often as you can. That was his motto, and you can't argue with that.
Hopefully there's no night nurses criticising you this time.
No. Hopefully not up there. Let's hope not. She's the ghost of Nurse Ratchet isn't up there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.